I think rock and roll is a trauma response to events of the 21st century. That's what I think it is.
Yeah, sometimes someone asks me when I was saved, and I always respond 2,000 years ago. What's the deal with Prince? I don't get Prince. Like, I've tried.
Remember we sat around shouting back and forth talking about Mr. Rogers in Charleston
Screw
that one night?
Mr. Rogers.
Yeah, get him. So anyway, that was fun. We sat around drinking wine and talking about Mr. Rogers negatively.
So yeah, so what were you raised as? Like, were you? I reckon you probably weren't always Orthodox.
Yeah, so basically, when I was a little kid, I didn't really understand what church was or religion. My parents were Catholic. Um, I think that when I was born, there was some familial pressure to like chrismate us, but not, they don't call it that. It's called christening, sprinkling the
Right.
water over the baby's head in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So, they kept to their roots in that, but I don't think they went to church much. The first time I remember going to a church, I was very young, and we had one in our neighborhood. I lived in a small New England town called it was Situate, but this was in North Situate. And Situate was a really tiny town, so I grew up going to the smallest public high school in the smallest state in the country. But it was really a crucible for creativity. But okay, so I'm in that town and I'm growing up, and we go over to a church. I think my mom and dad might be having trouble, and she just wants to go over to the church and pray. I don't know what she's praying for. That was just my guess as a little kid. She seemed upset about something, and that was my first time I can remember stepping foot in the church and like seeing a cross and thinking it was so weird that like there's a building devoted to this. Like I really had like no understanding of who Jesus was, but there was this crucifix. It was very realistic, wooden carving with the nails and the feet, and like kind of like you could see where the skin was raised and swelling around the nails and through the top of the wrist, and the cross. It had the crown of thorns. I was like, what the heck is going on here? This is kind of wild. And so I sat there and stared at it while my mom prayed for like a half an hour. So that was my first church experience. And I think later, just shortly after that, there was more marital trouble. Now, just to spoil the story, they worked through all the marital troubles. They're still married, and it's wonderful.
It's great.
But yeah, there was some trouble, and so I think they decided, hey, like we can't raise these kids without this. Let's bring them to church. They knew what the world was like, and so I started going to Catholic church when I was around 5, and went to Catholic school as a kid. For the most part, it was a strange experience. It was a bad time to be Catholic in New England with the scandals at my school, and there was a scandal everywhere you went. So, with that said, for whatever reason, I had kind of like the internal dialogue. It wasn't like I ever had doubt in God or Christ. I don't remember thinking Jesus was just an option or anything like that, or wasn't central to what the world was, although the faith around me was falling apart and my parents weren't taking it particularly seriously at the time. They would just like kind of drop us off at church sometimes. I don't mean to put them in a bad light, but that truly happened. They're in a different place at the time. So they like drop me and my brother off as kids, and we'd sneak out the back door and go get donuts and then come back with like a missalette so we could report on the service. So yeah, I had a very kind of strange experience in the Catholic Church, although I remember around Easter, like the Passion Play stuff we would do, the services where we were more participating as like the audience, responding to Christ, and then the Stations of the Cross that would happen on every year. That was more of like a dramatic, beautiful presentation of it. I was always very stirred by those things. So I did have a sense early on that there was something more to it than just like some organization. And I didn't really have a problem, despite the fact I was taught weird things, said weird things were said to me, strange things happened to me and my friends. It never made me question that God was real. So that was my upbringing. It was a Catholic.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, so then when did you convert to Orthodoxy?
Yeah, well, there was an in between stage if you want me to bring that up quick.
Hey, hit that like button.
Sure.
There was, so basically, as a Catholic, when it came time for confirmation, um, I was becoming more and more interested in my faith. And in our particular, because you grow up in a local situation, so you really only know your church, you know what's going on in your community. All of it seemed to be falling apart. We had a super weird priest, God bless him. I don't know what was wrong with him, but he was so strange. And I did not want to get confirmed. Like, I felt like everything was dead. And when it came time to, do I really want to bind myself to this? I was like, no, I'm going to go out and search on my own. So I went through like a long, 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 long phase of like searching through different Protestant groups, Reformed groups, Charismatic groups. I started out in the Charismatic groups because my uncle had run a church like that, and he had a youth group. So I went and messed around over there for a while. So it wasn't until my, my adulthood where I even knew like Orthodoxy existed in a way where it wasn't just the same as Catholicism. It wasn't like a group of Catholicism. I don't think I had the lens to understand it, because most of my understanding was never like I went back to the first century and like tried to find where things started and where the golden thread stayed, or who held to what was passed on. Never thought about it that way. It was always a matter of like, hey, I'm here. What do I like? What seems right to me? Like when things felt off, the words like, hey, this doesn't seem to match what's happening in scripture. Where's the church in the book of Acts? Why do we have a stage at church? Why are people cheering when I play guitar? This is strange. Like those things and also the style of music, which I wasn't a fan of. Like all those things I put on myself. I'm like, you know what? I'm too immature. I don't know how to evaluate these things yet. I know my tastes are definitely in a different place, but maybe my tastes are ill-formed. I didn't know. So I kind of, as I bounced around to those groups, a lot of times when there was a problem in the tradition, in the theology, in the art, I would blame myself beforehand. So it took me a long time to actually begin to want to investigate some of these inklings I had about what was wrong and what was historical and where did the church go and why is there this scandal of so many different groups I could go be a part of that disagree with each other that all say that they're the thing. How do I resolve that? So that's when Orthodoxy came into the picture. So that was
What?
probably 9 years ago. First time I heard about it, 8 years.
Oh,
No,
really?
almost a decade. Yeah, almost a decade. It's 2026 now. I forget what year it is. Yeah.
Oh, okay. What charismatic groups were you in?
Oh my gosh. Like
Because I grew
there.
up Pentecostal, so
Yeah.
like,
So it was like a Pentecostal non-denominational church I went to at first. I never formally went to like was a member of like an Assembly of God or some kind of formal Pentecostal denomination. Although a lot of the Protestant groups I'd run into, like some of that Pentecostalism was bleeding in the sense of like people raising their hands during
mhm.
music and getting, particularly excited, or the church having something equivalent to like an open mic night on a Wednesday night where random people are getting up and sharing absolutely bizarre prophecies. And, I used to call, I, I really, here's how I felt about it. Like, listen, I'm going to talk from my experience. I have theological problems with it, but for me, I was 17. I was going to a counselor. I'm in these churches. I'm going to a counselor, and she's trying to help us out because my dad has recently quit drinking, and the family's trying to come back together. And she was asking me about my church experience. And I said, you know what? I'm really concerned because I think normally in most groups, like people have to display some sort of character over time and reliability and trustworthiness. But I'm like, you could roll up into my church, and if you do the weird charismatic thing, like you're instantly like a hero, and you validated the pastor and what he's asked. And also people see you as someone who's very bold in your faith. And like, there's really no way to determine if what the person just said is like from God or not. They just got up and maybe shouted in a different language or something like that. And so I was super concerned that what was happening is that there was like a hack around the normal way to establish trust in a community. It was basically, you do these things and we get it. Like it's a sign, like, so that was kind of like, that was when I hung up on that. Like, so that was a very early part of my search outside of the Catholic Church, was into the Charismatic Church. And that was my assessment at the time,
Yeah. I
you know?
mean, ultimately, like, what was great about the Orthodox. Now, granted, I'm Anglican, in case
Yeah, I know.
anyone wonders.
Yeah.
But like the Orthodox, they accept the miracles, they accept the enchantment, they accept the
Mhm.
crazy stuff. Like that's wonderful. So there's a lot of Pentecostals who end up becoming Orthodox. you know. But the difference is they have discernment and they don't just assume that they're a prophet. And if
Yeah, yeah.
like some old lady goes to the priest and says, God told me that we're supposed to change our service time, then the priest is like, okay, you can go away
You
now.
bring up like a
Like,
really awesome point. It's really actually helped me as an artist too. So it's this notion of self-crowning. The idea that we've all met someone who's delusional. They believe something that we know is not part of objective reality. We've even met reasonable people that hang on to strange beliefs. They're very smart people I know that seem like they should be know better than it, but they're kind of like strange type of flat earther. It's like it's not an evidence base of type of flat earthing. It's like this grand conspiracy theory or something like that. And so well, I'm talking to this person. It's like, oh, yeah, well, if this person can fall for this, I could fall for things. And what things have I fallen for? So the idea of self-crowning is great. So like you mentioned that I'm Orthodox. So when I come on your podcast, if you were just like, let's say didn't know much about me, you asked me if I was a Christian, I would answer that question differently than I used to. So before I'd be like, yes, I'm a Christian. I believe these things, right? And then in Orthodox Church, I could say, no, in 2021, I was received into the Orthodox Church. Yeah. So that would be my claim would not just be that I had some internal idea that these things were true and this was the place to be, but it was also the church could see that I was moving, that was God moving in me. So they elected me for participation too by they didn't have to baptize me. No one has to baptize you. I mean, someone comes in under fallacious terms and is trying to, like infiltrate. They don't have to baptize the person. So, in that sense, it really takes the pressure off me. So it's like, how do I know I'm a Christian? Well, I believe enough to know I'm going to be saved one day. Like I can't think about it that way. I didn't know how to ever be humble thinking about it that way. I didn't know where the measuring stick lies. I think it's just more. It's much more of a reliable idea that God left us both things: the internal testimony and an outward thing we could point to,
yeah,
like baptism
sometimes
into the church.
someone asks me when I was saved, and I always respond 2,000 years ago.
Hey, that's a great answer. I'm stealing it. Yeah, yeah.
And they're like, you know what I mean? And I'm like, well, you know what I mean?
Yeah, of
And they're
course.
like, and so,
So in
yeah, I
Orthodoxy,
mean,
it takes your whole life to become a Christian. There's this, I am saved in that sense. I am saved that I was brought into the church. And then there's the working out your salvation in real time. Will you follow this? God's going to do his part. He's faithful to it all. He began this good work. He's going to complete his part. Will I participate in it? And then, of course, salvation in future tense in the eschaton, in the last judgment, would be
sure.
to be suitable. So that's like the way. So, I mean, it's fun to bring that up because like sometimes you talk about people, there's just this weird vocabulary gap and it's a different quantifier they're using when they say saved than I am.
Oh, for
So
the Orthodox, it's a totally because like I'm not Orthodox. My best friend Hammy is Orthodox. I
yeah, yeah,
introduced him to Orthodoxy. I got a lot of Orthodox friends, but I've been around enough to get the lingo for the most part.
yeah.
And there was one time I think it was Abbot Sergius came to Holy Ascension, and he was doing this retreat. And I asked the question, "Can anyone ever be sure of their salvation?" Now this is years ago, so in my mind, I'm asking like they're they're relatively confident they're not gonna like go burn in hell when they die, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
and his response was, eh, maybe one or two monks in the desert, but they would never tell you.
yeah. Right.
But like
Well,
what he means by that is
yeah.
they've achieved divinization in this lifetime.
Yes.
So like we meant two entirely different things by the question. So,
Yeah.
a lot of people don't get that. I will just say to give the Pentecostals their due, like I saw some stuff that I can't say was illegitimate. Like, stuff where someone had a dream like, hey, your son's gonna die in a car wreck tomorrow and the
Mm-hmm.
axle's gonna fall apart, and they call him at like 3 a.m. They're like, what? And so the next day, like they take the car to the mechanic and it says, I just want you to look at this. And the mechanic comes back at the end of the day and he says, well, you wouldn't believe this. The axle was about to fall apart and you were about to get into a wreck. So
Yeah.
like I think there is something interesting about like the charismatic world and like the whole movement of the re-enchantment of everything. And there's
Yeah.
an impulse there too, which I think is interesting. Like there was a Pentecostal church I went to, like I visited one time, and it said, experience the church the way it was in the book of Acts. And so in some sense, it's like the same impulse that drives people to Orthodoxy, which is, do you want to know how the church really was? We'll go visit the Orthodox. Well, for the Charismatics, they say, well, there were miracles happening. So where are the miracles? So do you want to see the church the way that it really was? Now,
Yeah.
granted, I'm much more amenable to the Orthodox at this point than I am. Well, I guess it depends on. I'm just skeptical. I believe stuff happens. Let's put it that way. I believe in
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay.
miracles.
So,
I want a little discernment. And if someone comes and tells me that like I need to change the music and service on Sunday because God told them to, I'm like,
yeah.
well, He can tell me too.
Yeah.
If He tells you and I think He tells me and I think He tells the priest, and we all independently arrive at the same conclusion, then okay, we'll sing that song on Sunday.
All right. Right. You bring up a really interesting area that I don't think a lot of people explore. There's a lot of assumptions about. And this is okay. So we want to use, let's say, like charismaticism. Okay, well, there was a miracle. Let's say maybe you experienced a miracle to some degree in some order of miracle that's true, right? Okay, so one, we have a beginning point of we're not supposed to pursue a sign in the Bible. Like, in other words, Christians are not here to chase miracles and signs. This is actually
Right.
considered wicked in the Christian. So first off, you have to check your impulse of why you're participating in this in the first place. If you're expecting God, if you're expecting the means by which God transfers himself is in an undeniable way where your free will would no longer be a part of it, like, I don't know, that seems like a strange impulse. I could see why that could be wicked. It's like demanding something from God that he would remove your agency in a way. Like, I don't have to think about it anymore. I know. So there's that aspect of it. So, but also the idea of, like, there's nothing in Orthodoxy or Christianity in general that doesn't say that God can't do whatever he wants inside of his creation. So you have to admit that all of us personally, even in a fallen state, in a bad system, that God can reach us in that spot, and that reaching to us is like a miracle in the sense that we had a trajectory in a different path. You know, he comes in with something like a hint to a better path and we respond. And so I think that we can really get confused if we say, hey, but this group did something like a genuine miracle or whatnot, because also these things are not restricted to Christian activity. Like the idea that historically something that appears to be good, right, could not just be a trap to get you to not go further in another direction. So, yeah, I think you bring up a great point on, like, I don't think that miracles or signs, they're obviously a part of the church, but they're at God's discretion. In Orthodoxy, let's just say, like, these, like a more intense, reliable spiritual gift would lie on the shoulders of someone who wouldn't misuse it, not me. Like, I'm gonna, like, if I could suddenly heal people or something like that, it's gonna go straight to my head, you know? So I don't think we really understand the interplay of that. And but just because I would expect God to show up anywhere in the world. So, for example, the difference between me and, like, when I was in a charismatic church, it was a huge problem to them that, let's just say, there was a program down the road that was Buddhist and people were actually getting off of alcohol through it. Because part of our witness was that here's what Christ did in my life. But a lot of these things can be done by natural means or even supernatural means that aren't Christian. So I don't think it's really a great point of evaluation to, like, say, well, there's something good happening over there. Good happens everywhere. Good
Well, and
happens
it's
everywhere.
exactly why the Orthodox are a little about, like, yeah, miracles happen, but that doesn't mean that you're Orthodox because you saw a miracle.
Yeah. Or, yeah, you even had a miracle
Because,
happen to you. So let's just take it this way, Matthew. The woman who's caught in adultery, brought before Christ. Like, we could re-engineer this, like, as some kind of justification for adultery. It's like, well, look, what did she do to meet Jesus? She committed adultery, right? What did these guys do to bring her to Jesus? Well, they were the part of some scam where they're trying to trap this girl or someone, you know, like, whatever you want to speculate on their reason. But Jesus seems to discern that. But we don't like, okay, so God found you there doesn't mean that that's a good thing, you know? So that's a really extreme example. I'm not saying Pentecostal churches are like adultery, but anything like that. So those claims don't move. Like the fact that good things appear somewhere or I have a good experience somewhere doesn't have anything to do with what moves me towards what I think is true, or what appears to be true, you know? So, because there's lots of
Right.
ways to be tricked into things, I guess. So that would be
Yeah,
my,
I think
yeah.
miracles don't prove that like one group is more little o orthodox than another. They just prove that materialism is stupid. You know?
I love that. I love that explanation. That works for
Yeah.
me. I will
So
settle on that one.
I don't know how
Adjourned.
we got off on all
Well,
this.
no,
but,
no, it's funny because you're like a musician, I'm a musician. We're talking about these things. I love talking about these things. Don't get me wrong, but this is kind of fun.
hey, you need a shirt or a hat or a sweatshirt because you're cold and you need some clothes. Well, guess what? George McCary made this awesome design of St. George. So get the George St. George shirt or George St. George hoodie and then look awesome in this cool design and help support the podcast. Thanks.
So I'll go wherever you want to go.
Yeah. I just try to follow the thread wherever it goes.
Yeah.
And if it
No, that's
goes
how to
off
do
on
it.
a
I love it.
tangent,
Yeah.
So but music wise, so you grew up playing music, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I grew up in a musical family, Matthew. Like, is your
Are
family
you
like that?
my dad plays the bass.
Okay.
So like he plays the electric bass and he's like real into jazz. So I grew up listening to like mostly Jocko,
Oh,
'cause
yeah.
that's the thing, Weather
Mhm.
Report and
Oh, yeah.
and that type of stuff. But yeah, so like, are you primarily a reader,
I'm a little bit everything, man. Like, I don't know what happened to me along the years. So, my family is very musical, both sides. So my dad was a radio announcer. He had a very popular radio show. So our last name where I grew up had some weight to it. So if I got pulled over by a cop for speeding, they sometimes would let me go when they saw the name on the registration. They'd be like, "Oh, I love to listen to your dad's show," whatever. So he was a little bit of a local celebrity. My mom was a jazz singer, but she was trained in many ways in music. She also would compose and write. Once we were born, the professional side of her career slowed down, and but she was an
singer
absolute.
in what way?
Oh,
what kind of
I mean,
singer?
from like Julie Andrews, Judy Garland to like more of like that Barbara Streisand, like 70s kind of performance.
So
But
not
very,
like opera singer, but like
no,
like
she was
folk
definitely, it was
pop.
more popular
Yeah.
forms. Yeah. Um, So yeah, she had a really lovely voice, but she could have done anything from like a voice a Disney character to Ella Fitzgerald, so that kind of range.
Nice.
So basically, but our family Christmas parties were like the Von Trapps from The Sound of Music. It was like everybody had their parts. You grew up in a family. You didn't even have like we passed out music some years if we were learning something new, but people kind of knew the songs, and so like bringing a girlfriend over to the house for Christmas was super intimidating to her because there was like no way to participate until I met my wife. She came in and she's like, "I found my people." So
Nice.
anyway, yeah, we were all musicians. So music wasn't like it was an optional thing in our family. So I was forced to take piano lessons from the time I was young, and I was not into it at first. Although, like me and my brother, like gravitated towards it. It wasn't like something we had to adapt to. Our family was all musicians, so it wasn't until I was like 12 or 13 that I really got into it. So around 12. I heard a song by Prince where he rips at the end of the song on a guitar. It's called "Let's Go Crazy," and he
Okay.
just goes off at the end of the song in the long version. And I heard that in the radio. It was on my dad's radio station. I was like, "That's what I want to do right there. That's way cooler than piano to me at the time." So I begged my parents if I could switch from piano to electric guitar. So I did that then, but at the same time, so I was classically trained. By the time I got to high school, I had a really, really great music teacher. I had incredible teachers. I don't know what to say.
So by classically trained, so you switch from sorry to interrupt. You
Yeah,
switch from
please.
piano to electric guitar. But what level were you like on the piano, for example?
So I'm dyslexic a little bit, so I always hit it. But piano reading was more like my ear was so much more powerful than my eye in that capacity. So my ear training was way ahead of it. So I can just name notes out of the thin air. I've been able to do that since I was young. I didn't know it. So I could say, like, I could start singing a song before I went to the piano. And then as soon as I hit the piano, I was already in the right key. I was like, I
Uh-huh.
just assumed that was something that was native to musicians. I didn't realize that there was something different going on with that.
No, I
So,
can't do that.
yeah,
I
okay,
can figure a song out by ear, but I don't have perfect pitch. So you
okay.
know.
Um, and I really haven't. I started to develop it where I could just name like notes out of chords and stuff. It was ruining my ability to enjoy music. So I kind of there's a lot of things I've learned I've tried to forget. So in ninth grade, I had this teacher. He was the trumpet player. I think he was the bandmaster for Lionel Hampton, president of the
Oh well,
Vibes and Jazz. So I
yeah.
had him in ninth grade, and he was the best because like he rolled into class the first day. And I don't mean to put him in a bad light, but I think he had a hangover from something. He had this awesome afro. It was like
He's a
and
jazz musician. What do you
and yeah,
expect?
exactly. He was a legend. I have no fault with this man, but he had an afro like long after like people had afros in the 80s, like it was like a 70s afro in the 80s, and he was just the coolest to me, and he was always kind of disheveled. But he came into class and he just threw his head down on the desk for the first 15 minutes of class and said nothing to us on the first day, and then got up, looked around, opened his trumpet case, and then like just blew like the highest note for like 3 minutes straight, and then went into like a solo improvisational trumpet thing and put it back in his case and put his head down at the desk and stayed there until the bell rang. I was like, this is my favorite class I've ever been in. This is going to go well. And so he was obviously unconventional. So as soon as he started trying to teach us, he understood. He's like, we started with like how to form a mode. You know, the modes Aeolian,
Yeah.
Dorian, Phrygian, Mixolydian. So he was like, oh my gosh, I have a student who already knows this. Because on guitar, you kind of learn these things. If you want to improvise on guitar, you better learn the modes and pentatonic scales and stuff. So he was like, he wanted to see how fast he could teach me stuff. And so he gave me a completely separate curriculum. So by the time I was done with my ninth grade year, I had memorized the concert scales for all the classical instruments. I was starting to write music like that. I was beginning to, to do some more heavy jazz improvisation. So I had like this super fast track, which was very strange for me. So from that moment on, when it came in popular music, I had all of this knowledge base I could never discuss with anyone. There was no point in it, and it just sounded like I was trying to talk down to them. So, when it came to music theory and such, so yeah, I think for a popular music musician, like I think I have an overwhelming amount of musical theory that I really can't apply in that setting, which is why I branch out often. So yeah, that's what happened to me. So this guy, by the time I was done with him, and so on guitar versus piano, there's just way less instances to read music. So I started taking classical guitar around 15, learned to read music, learned fingerstyle. Felt that was an important thing for me to round out my like potential music career. And unlike piano, there was almost never an opportunity where someone dropped sheet music in front of me that had notes on it.
Oh, okay.
So it just drifts away. It's like you can point to any note or anything on any page. I can tell you what it is and where it is. But the idea of doing it quickly and it being accessible to me, no, it's way easier for me if I just heard the song to play it back than it would be to ever read it through music. So yeah, it all kind of like there's a ton of stuff that I used to know that is just gone. But the good news is once you have accessed it, you know how to find it again. So in other words, if I need to use these things like um, sight reading or whatnot, if I know there's a situation I'm going to be in where I have to read music, I can brush up.
Now, when
And
you write the type of music that you write, are you notating any of it? And you also said you
sometimes,
did some like film score stuff.
yeah.
So,
So
like, are you
sometimes, so,
like punching that into Sibelius or Dorico or whatever, or is it mostly like I'll lay down a track, and then I'll lay it down on the violin, and now I'll lay it down. You know what I mean?
yeah, no. So like first time I tried to write any music out that I had written was like fourth grade. But by the time I was in high school, I'd even write arrangements for a high school choir and stuff like that. So I started writing stuff down, but again, it was like every year there was less need to do that. So I remember it's like if I needed strings, I better be able to write those parts out. Like it wasn't like I had an abundance of Stefani Grappelli, jazz violinist around us that could improvise and really understood music theory in that way. So it was mostly like, well, you better type this out for them to read. So I did some of that for a while, but I think the last time I actually wrote something out myself was eons ago. Like out
Oh,
if you
really?
don't count just changing music. Yeah. So
So,
like
like
even
Firebird, that's not written. Like none of that's really
no, none
written
of that
out.
exists. Well, so the last thing I had to do like this was in London last year, Jordan Peterson brought Kate and I in to play with like these members of the Bulgarian Symphony Orchestra. And so I had to take our song and arrange it out for them. But the thing was, I already had the arrangement done. I just didn't have it done for that ensemble. So I had a guy do it. It was like he was awesome. So I robbed myself of the joy and the satisfaction of it, but it's my arrangement. I already played it and performed it, and I already had it done into the, it's a song called Irony from I think 2017 on one of our records.
Oh, okay.
And so the arrangement on there is a string octet and a brass quintet on Irony. And live, we did not have the same layout. So he just had to translate my existing arrangement over to it. So yeah, still doing things like that. But again, like with Sample World and these total performance samples. So in other words, if you go and listen, there's a film I did in Queen of the Night that came out in 2022. I did there's not a note of music you hear played outside of singing that I didn't play. So even the orchestral stuff was performed one instrument at a time by me.
What all do you play? Like what all instruments?
Well, so mostly with samples, but obviously like the piano, the guitar, the bass.
So it's mostly piano, guitar that you're.
Yeah, but I play cello too. So what I noticed, okay, so there's a thing they did in Lord of the Rings where they have these massive computer generated crowds, and there's something kind of like automated about how they move and make decisions, but they would select certain like insert real people in there, or like actually a better version of this is even older. Alfred Hitchcock, The Birds. There's a scene where there's this like jungle gym playground and there's all these crows.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's like 120 crows in this jungle gym. It's like, how do you get 120 real crows on a jungle gym? Like, you staple all their feet to it. Like, what are you going to do? So they only got like 8 real crows or ravens, whatever they were using, and like tied their foot to the little bar, and the rest were fake. But that movement is enough to totally fool you. But now if you're looking for it, like I just told you that, you'll kind of see it. But otherwise, you would just see the movement and you look around. So a lot of times when it comes to arranging using samples, meaning samples not like they're already performed parts, they're already performed notes of different articulations. So they'll have the pizzicato for the violin, they'll have the tremolos, version of each note. Each note is recorded at different volumes. And so with these total performance samples, with some knowledge of the instrument, like it'll even make the sound of the finger letting off of the fretboard when you do it, and then how to do, glissandos and all these different things you can do with the technique. So if you take just a string sample of, let's say, a string section, let's say it's supposed to be your first violins, and you try to arrange with that, the problem is that immediately, if I go and I add harmony within that section, because the original sample was of 8 violins, now I have 16 first violins. I add one more note and I have 24 first violins. It is not a sound we're used to hearing. It's where it starts to sound fake. But I learned this. If I got like a couple of different sounding samples, like different approaches to sampling, and I played the part myself multiple times, right? Then it actually sounded like an orchestra. But not just that, is that I could do that. Let's say it's the cello section. I play the cello part and I leave one of the cello parts out for me to play on a real cello. So I get my cello and I play that one part. All of the sloppy little things that will happen naturally, and the sound of the bow getting lifted and other idiosyncratic noises like your clothes, these things will start to build up, and it creates a very convincing effect like Alfred Hitchcock did in The Birds, of kind of hybridizing the two things, because I want an edge over the other people who are using the same samples. I want to know better how to engage them so it sounds real. I've also arranged for those instruments in a real space and know what they sound like in a real space. So I think it gives me an advantage maybe. But again,
that's like the mechanism of the chorus effect. And so like, like the reason like a string section sounds the way that it does versus just is precisely because they can't all play perfectly in tune with each other.
Yeah,
it's like the
it phases out if they do.
Makes it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if people know how sound works, like, so for example, this is part of the reason why it's really tricky to record your own voice layered in harmony. So there's a song, like I'm keep referencing this same recording because I did a lot of these tricks. So in the 2022 Queen of the Night, there's a song called Come Jesu, which is a Bach piece, where I kind of removed some of the coloratura and stuff and turned it into like a hook of it. But obviously the song's public domain, so I'm free to use it. But I can't just go grab someone else's recording. So I'm like, well, it's just me and you, Kate. We're gonna do 32 parts here, and so every pass we sang it, you have to. The intonation problems are already going to be there because we're not using auto tune or anything like that, where the note's perfect. But you have to radically change the sound of your voice and the distance from your microphone. So if you imagine a choir, and there's going to be, let's say, there's a tenor in the front row who's only 3 feet from the microphone. There's a tenor in the back row who's 12 feet from the microphone. And that microphone has a different way of picking up that sound. So other thing you have to do is not record everything at the same distance from the microphone. So Kate and I literally layered this. We did like we thought of people we knew who sang and like did impressions of them. And then when we're done, I think it's really convincing. So if you pulled up that track or you pulled in that track right now, I don't know if people would be fooled. Um, I think people would be fooled into thinking that that was a full choir, not just my wife and I overdubbing. If that makes
Okay.
sense. Yeah. So these are just some of the approaches on how I handle orchestration now, because I basically almost record in a glorified closet. It's a very small space. It's a perfectly tuned space for mixing audio and whatnot. But I have to, when I make a recording and it's released, it doesn't matter that I'm recording in that space and I don't have a studio like Blackbird in Nashville, or the audience, when they hear it at the end of the day, it's got to compete. It's got to compete with everything. I'm not going to be sitting next to it. Now, I don't have as much money as everybody else and didn't have as much time. And so that's why it's not as good. So I knew right away, like from the time I was young, that that was an excuse. If I wanted to move out of my like local area, that was an
Right.
excuse I couldn't accept. So whenever I was done, I had to put it next to whatever thing I loved, and it had to be as good or better in my mind to do it. So these are some of the things I've learned over the years to try to get like, I've listened to a lot of real orchestration. I've been to a lot of orchestras. I've been to the opera. I've been to all these things. I know what they really sound like. And I know the stuff I'm hearing behind television shows, and it doesn't quite sound like that. It's, very often, because on television, they can't afford a real orchestra. People are doing the same thing I'm doing. They're doing every trick they can to make it sound realistic. But to me, when I pull up Game of Thrones and I hear dun 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 dun, dun, those sound like samples to me. It just sounds like I like the theme, but it sounds like cheese. The actual performance or recording.
Speaking
So
of bad like TV music, I was watching Landman.
what the heck is Landman?
Oh my gosh, it's just the worst. It's the absolute worst. Just so like the theme for Landman is like the same riff for 3 minutes. That's all it is. It's the most boring.
Yeah. No, but that's
Yeah.
everything, Matthew. It's like the same thing that happened with logos. The ornamentation's gone. So HBO kind of did it. Like, so post Game of Thrones, they came out with Westworld, which has kind of a nice theme, but it's a lot more abstract. There are other shows that were popular on Showtime. I'm trying to think of the song. It's like a really good example of a bad theme song. Homeland with Claire Danes. If you go listen to the theme song, it's like a collage. And so there is something in the modern world where
See,
it's like,
I don't hate that as much because it's at least interesting.
it could be. It can be. I don't think that particular example, and maybe you've heard it. I don't think that particular example is
It's
a
okay.
great version
It's not
of it.
great.
Yeah. But
It's
so
not
there, but it's the same thing. It's like, I used to love John Williams' score. I just went and heard Empire Strikes Back live at the Jacksonville Symphony Orchestra. I love, it's cheesy, but I love going to these movies with the real orchestra. I guess it's less cheesy than going to the movie. But
What do you think of
you know,
Hans Zimmer?
Hans Zimmer's great, but he's moved away from melodies too. You know what I mean? So what John Williams used to do for Empire Strikes Back, like, you can't do that anymore. It doesn't register. Like, characters don't have themes in the same ways. It's almost like the music has to be less pointed. Like, if something points too hard, it's like we don't trust it. It feels like propaganda or something like that. But I think that there's actually more propaganda in this blur where I don't know what the music means.
Because like John Williams, the music is it's almost a commentary on what's happening. It's sitting on top of the music. Whereas
Yeah.
like Hans Zimmer, it's like meant to affect, give you
Yeah,
the
well, Hans
effect
Zimmer's a
of what's-
different animal. He's a producer too. Like John Williams is writing on his piano at home, giving some suggestions to an orchestrator. Hans Zimmer is like a studio guy. The guy wakes up like a normal musician at like 7 p.m. and rolls into the studio and gets the weirdest people and comes up with crazy sounds, but he's also got an incredible knowledge base. I don't think he's better than John Williams as far as when it comes to melody or harmony, or they're even close, but Hans Zimmer is doing some cool crap. Like,
I
he's
do
got some
love some Hans Zimmer.
he's
the
got
whole,
some
like,
stuff
let's take
available to him.
bagpipes and electric guitar and whatnot. Let's do the whole like Phrygian Spanish thing on,
Yep.
you know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
The Dune
Yeah, I
score
love it.
where it just goes from 1 to flat 1. It's like,
Yep.
what a great sound. And now, like, like once a month that finds its way into my organ improv at church.
That's pretty cool. Well, also, he can, like, what he does in Interstellar, that's like a 4-chord theme. It's like 4 notes, basically, the theme, and they're perfectly chosen. They don't, It
It's like
just it
Arvo
keeps.
Pärt. It's
Yep.
like the Arvo Pärt of film scoring.
Yeah, this is what I can't do. This is what you're pointing out, the thing that I'm really bad at, where it's like you just take one simple thing and it grows in weight and gravitas over time throughout the piece. And like those, like Arvo part where he can just let something be in C major and no tension and sit beautifully. Like, I don't know, like when I hear his stuff, I'm like, oh my gosh, man, you've got a brass pair on you to think that like this, because there's a part of me that's worried about people will think I don't know what the heck I'm doing. Because a kid, there's something very close to it being childish, but it's not. You know what I mean? It's like the right kind of childish, and so I'm always afraid of those things. Yeah, so that's why I'm a maximalist for the most part.
Maybe it's like Rothko.
Yeah, it's really great.
I don't know. I tried to like say to Father Silouan, I'm like, I'm not sure that my daughter couldn't do that. You know, it's a color, and he was very quick to say. He didn't say you're an idiot, but he basically said you're an idiot. You couldn't do that.
Right.
I was like, okay, well, maybe I couldn't do that.
Well, yeah. No, so that's the first impression people have when they go to a modern art gallery. They look at like a Jasper Johns painting, like simplistic painting of an American flag, and they'll be like, yeah, I could do that. And we don't understand. Maybe we don't need to. Maybe we're right. Maybe we don't. Maybe the fact that we have to understand the context of the movement and its context against other movements really shouldn't be the key thing we need to know to appreciate the art. You know what I'm saying? Like, 'cause like sometimes art becomes an inside joke to the artists. Not like joke might be the wrong word, but we get what I'm saying. It's like, well, you have to know what he's referencing and what he's pointing to. And I think sometimes in a way it's like the wrong way to participate in human anthropology, in the sense that there are things that lead certain directions that we know that the subversion of those things could be an overall problem. And so what I when I talk about this idea, I talk about the idea that like there's a way when a culture, let's just take like the 17th century where you had like, or the 16th century where you actually had like benefactors to great artists, and you lived in a culture where everybody was sort of building on the past art. America was a very strange thing we've got going here. Like, I don't know if there was ever such a large swath of valuable land available in such a modern world to be developed so quickly by so many different nations at the same time with competitive stories. I think it really created a crucible for creativity, but it also made us prioritize novel things in the way where it's been a way to exploit us and what music means and what stories are and what role the story is supposed to have in our life. I think that there's this blur in abstraction of modern art that we have to be super skeptical of. Like, but not so skeptical of we can't figure out, can this be used in a good way? But skeptical enough that we understand that, like, yeah, like things creep in a bad direction. Like there's something in the world that's causing human activity to creep in a bad direction. And what is that? And how has it affected art? And how have maybe my own tastes been formed against me? We could talk about that. Like, because I think rock and roll, like I do a lot of it's a problem. It's not great. Like, rock and roll is not a great thing. Like, the fact that it has to exist.
Okay, so I was watching this podcast the other day, right? The Transposition podcast. This guy, Brantley something, Voser, I think is his name. Cool
Sounds
dude.
like a video game character.
Cool dude. We follow each other on Twitter.
Hey, I got a family, so help support me on Patreon.
Anyway, I was watching this podcast, and I think, who's the Annie Crawford who did one of the classes?
Yeah, I love Annie. Yeah, she's brilliant.
Yeah, she was bringing up like this Skillet thing. Evidently, this was a controversy that I didn't know was a controversy. Was that Skillet did this song "O Come Emmanuel," and then at one, in like the super rock version, and then all of a sudden, rah, and they start screaming and whatnot, and they do the metal thing. It's just metal, They're doing a metal cover of Veni Veni Emmanuel, and so like, but the conversation ended up going like, is metal a good thing? And it was almost like they were trying to say, nah, it's not. And I don't know, like I would put like Between the Buried and Me or Demon Hunter over against 95% of contemporary Christian music.
Oh yeah.
Aesthetically, theologically, all like spiritually, all the above,
Yeah.
Just because there's some legit music into it. There's especially, you watch El Estepario Siberiano, the drummer, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my
Killing
gosh,
it.
that dude's
Sick.
absolutely
Yeah.
insane. And I'm like, there's parts of that culture that I think that doesn't jive with Christianity. Like when I see a girl and she's got the spikes on her neck and she's like almost trying to look ugly. I'm like, I don't know. There seems something that's like antithetical to femininity about this that seems like it doesn't jive with Christianity, you know?
Yeah.
But like, I can't say that there's like an intrinsic quality of guitar distortion and super heavy metal breakdowns, of which there's a few metally sounding breakdowns on Firebird that I dug, you know?
Oh, you can
So,
take the boy out of metal, but you can't take the metal out of the boy. That's what you're hearing there. Yeah.
yeah. So,
Yeah. No, that's part of my roots. Yeah, for sure.
yeah. So I'm like, I don't think there's anything wrong with it per se. I don't know, like it shouldn't be church music, but
Well, okay.
this is like the question of where do things exist on the hierarchy of things, you
Can
know?
we talk about this for a while? Because I think this is a great subject. And
Sure.
I've lived in this world for so long of trying to balance what's the right vehicle as far as like the medium is the message. What's the right medium for this message? Because there are all kinds of ways, like we know when things are out of context. Like if you went to a Chinese restaurant and you look at the menu and you're hearing the Chinese music and all of a sudden there's like chicken parmigiana. You're like, all right, well, that doesn't belong here, right? Or if they don't use the right font for the store logo, it just is like you don't think Asian anymore, right? There's certain things that go with other things. And so I'm going to make an argument that there's everything in its right place, that these things they might have come about as a part of a problem. But if we go all the way back, Peugeot talks about this all the time, that Cain, in his wandering and his lack of meaning in the world and his inability under his current state to even find food in the world, must build a city. And we don't think of cities. We understand that a city could be good or bad. City can be super helpful for certain things. It can be a bad thing. So these things kind of function more like that. There's a sword has come into existence. Swords can be a good thing. God uses swords as a positive analogy. First person that invents a sword, no one else has got a sword. That sword's a problem and it's going to be misused. So you have to think about these categories through that lens. So I would like to defend my original statement. I think rock and roll is a trauma response to events of the 21st century. That's what I think it is.
Sure.
The answer seems farther away, so our voice gets louder. Meaning something like this. Okay, you're married. You guys are having a lovely time. You're celebrating your anniversary and you're leaning over the table and you're talking quietly to each other. You feel very close. You have the same goals in life, right? You have there's nothing, it seems like there's nothing in between you at that moment, and you speak gently and softly to each other. But then eventually, maybe it's something minor, maybe it's something stupid about something a person keeps doing or showing up late or leaving dishes out or whatever, and the tone of the conversation changes. And things aren't arbitrarily getting louder. It's not just an emotional response. It's a metaphysical reality that you're actually metaphysically farther apart in spirit. So when lovers are close, they speak quietly and they speak sweetly, but when they're farther apart, they speak louder. Obviously, there's lines to this metaphysics where it really gets into like emotional abuse or something like that, but it's kind of natural for someone to get a little louder when they're upset or they feel that we should be together or we're not together on something. So this is an aspect
Although
of
you
it.
can also get louder when you're just having a good time.
Exactly. Why are we getting louder? Because now we're looking at the same thing and we're shouting at the beautiful thing together, right? So
you got a little drunk. You didn't realize your voice was so loud.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
you're
that's
3
me.
beers in and you're just shouting, and everyone's like, "Hey, dude, calm your voice down."
That's
You're
me without the
fine.
alcohol. Remember we sat around shouting back and forth talking about Mr. Rogers in Charleston
Screw
that one
Mr.
night?
Rogers.
Yeah, get him. So anyway, that was fun. We sat around drinking wine and talking about Mr. Rogers negatively. So it doesn't happen often enough. But anyway, let's not get rabbit trailed on that. So rock and roll. Yeah. So, okay. 20th century was crazy. Like we were born into it, so we don't realize that's crazy. But like people like my parents, they were too young, maybe. Yeah, but like their older brother or like, their parents for sure, they suddenly lived in a world where you could eviscerate 100,000 people with the press of a button in order. Like, that's not a thing. That's different than a weather event. This is a civilization. Nature, like nature to us appears sort of arbitrary. I don't believe nature's arbitrary at all. I believe it's governed, by angels, but that all the cosmic these laws that we think are we just assume. But civilization is the work of mankind, right? And so in the civilizational work, we created something that was worse than an earthquake or a hurricane. Something that now suddenly kids were growing up in the 1950s doing drills with their desk was going to save them from nuclear weapons, the like the radiation wasn't going to turn them inside out too. So these were kind of that's a strange time to grow up in. So we don't know how flexible a human being is. What does that do to us? So what is it? We all know there's defense mechanisms that people can develop on their own. Right. So I had a defense mechanism growing up. One of the obvious ones was I was emotionally shut off in certain ways. I was a super sensitive kid, emotionally,
Right.
everything felt a lot stronger to me. So I learned to start when I would get sad or scared. I learned how to quarantine those things so I didn't even not acknowledge them. But as you grow up now, there's certain there's a disconnection you have where you should have empathy in certain situations. Your empathy's fine over here, but it's quarantined over here. It's why can't you engage these kind of moments, right? Well, it was a self-protection. I had to learn my way out of it. I feel like I've really healed of those things in my Christianity. But at the same time, these trauma responses are also helpful when they happen, right? Because what am I going to do? Throw myself off a cliff because I can't handle myself emotionally? So all of these defense mechanisms, when we're vulnerable, serve a purpose that it won't serve for long. So I think that a lot of the aggressive changes we saw were we went from crooning to screaming, in a very short period of time historically. There was nothing like this beforehand, right? Unless you went into Maori cultures and saw those kind of strange type of rituals they would do. So I think it's completely a trauma. I think that what we're participating in is I have to understand when I pick up rock, when I pick up rock music, I have to understand why it exists and what's it for. This is why our messaging is very, in a way, slightly punk against the system. Not entirely Rage Against the Machine, where it's a political system we're against, or or punk music where they're against a system with no solution.
You mean Rage Against the Machine, where you had to show your COVID certificate in order to get into their shows?
Dude, how humiliating is that for that band? You just nailed it. How humiliating is that?
The world, man.
Dude, the world's different than we think it is. There's a lot of grandstanding going on. A lot of people say what they want the world to be, and they don't want to live in that world. I mean, obviously, Billie Eilish doesn't want to live in the world she's created for herself in the last couple of weeks with her statement. I don't want to get into this, whether she's right or wrong, but you can see when people.
Know what she said.
She said basically at the Grammys, no one is illegal on foreign land. Well, immediately she was tested on that. So the Native American tribe said, thank you for offering us our land back. We expect this to come. And people started moving onto her property. It didn't go well because the world she was saying she wanted to live in, she really doesn't. So we're just used to kind of grandstanding. I used to do it. I still probably do it in a way. I don't know which way is I virtue signal. Please tell me if you hear me do it. But there's all kinds of things we say that we don't really ever plan on doing. Hypocrisy, whatever it is called. So anyway, zooming back around. Yeah, so we can see music, the guitars, they start to yell. And the drummer, right, they start to slam. And the singer, he's pushing. Part of what we love about rock and roll is it's all about to fall apart, and it doesn't. And I think this occurred for a good reason. We're really far away. We're not moving towards nobility. We're not moving into a noble future of love and no murder and peace that we all say we want. We're actually farther away from it than we've ever been. And we've created tools knowing that not everybody, no matter what we do in this world, we can't make everybody sane. We can't make, and the problem is once these things exist, so if you bring a gun to a bar, anybody could pick that gun out of your pocket. Even though if you're, and then what are they? They have the same gun and they have a different motive. So the fact that these things existed in the world, I feel like rock and roll, even though a lot of the songs they emerged at first were kind of nonsense, whatever, jailhouse rock or whatever. But that's kind of how things creep in. They find a way in. So I have to understand that what I'm participating in is part of like a cultural trauma response in a way to like what the world is and how dystopian things are. And I mean, the news is getting worse every day. Like conspiracy theorists are eating great. And it's sadly not because they were wrong. Like they're just eating great in like the sense of vindication. Like all the craziest things people have been saying are coming true. And
Yes.
so what do we do about this? Like we're not getting any farther away from rock and roll. We've moved way beyond that. We've moved into like the pornification of music. People can't draw from poetic places, or the audience doesn't have the time to listen. They'll never engage enough. So the salaciousness is getting amplified. Every instance to lower a human away from nobility, something more royal or higher, or what we could become, the exact opposite is rewarded and emphasized as a necessary psychological component of your life that you can't deny your desires or something like that. So this is the world I make music in. I mean, I'm not making liturgical music at church. I want to, but I'm not. So, okay, so what am I now? It's like, well, um, I don't know. I think there's something you need to hear, and this is your language. So I'm going to come into your house and respect what you love, right? And try to show you, like, I'm not trying to show people the ultimate answer, like in this. You just can't. Like, I've left
But
the
it
narthex
almost
of the
seems
church
like you're scandalized by the genre of music that you participate in.
100%. I could be scandalized by any genre I participate in. It
So
has its ups. Yeah.
before we're scandalized on that, so right, I think you can subsume all this into basically two questions, and they'll sort of relegate where, like, well, let's take it to an extreme where death metal is as a genre, okay? Because you could say death metal sort of comes out of rock and roll, right? And then there's all kinds of stuff that attaches itself to death metal. But like, you could just take the music of like August Burns Red, which I do very much love, um, just by itself, and without the culture of sort of like hardcore metal around it, right? Um, but I think so there's two questions. One is the question of technology. Is technology neutral?
Hmm.
Because, because in a sense, it seems like what we're saying, if it's a trauma response, if it's a garment of skin per se, then it's a
Yeah.
technology. And you can
Yes.
think all of rock and roll is sort of technological to begin with because it's using new technologies in order to create timbres that was never
Yeah. Yeah.
like really be able to make before. So is technology neutral? Which is like maybe a separate question to unpack that's like
It's
too
a great
big
question. Yeah.
because I tend to think that it is, and I'm unconvinced that it's not. But I think it can, because like even stuff that you think, well, like the nuclear bomb, well, nuclear energy, and like the gun, it's like, well, you need to eat, and it's like, but anyway, the other question is, if you're gonna determine like a specific genre of music and where its proper location is, especially
Hmm.
within this like great Christian ontological hierarchy, I think there's two questions. One, do you have to separate the intrinsic quality of the music itself from its foundations? And so the big question is, how important are the foundations of the music? How important is the fact that it came from a trauma response? Because I could dichotomize those two things, and I can say it really doesn't matter what the foundation of the music came from. I can just judge it by its own intrinsic aesthetic qualities. You see what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So here's
And
why.
so, like, so the
Yes.
question is, do the foundations of the thing actually matter, or can we dichotomize? Because then that will.
Yeah. So you could, it's both and. So the foundations of the thing absolutely matter. Um, not in the sense of, oh, it's automatically bad because it came out of a bad thing. I don't think it matters in that sense. It tells you the problem it arose to solve. It points to the problem.
Okay.
So, you know, um, so basically I have a trauma response and I'm shut down emotionally for certain reasons. What? Well, that was too much for you. If someone is, let's say, in a certain mode of stress and they come home and they drink too much every night, right? Um, the drinking shows you the problem, right? It's not the alcohol. Alcohol's great, but not everybody becomes an alcoholic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why? Well, what stopped those people? Because they weren't using it as a supplement for a certain type of need. So we just have to understand the trade-offs of what we're getting involved in. So if rock and roll is like a trauma response to, let's say, our technology has surpassed our humanity and no one's doing anything about it and it's not slowing down, and every time we point it out it just gets worse, and they build something bigger and they build something more controlling, and there seems to be all the tools in place converging for the worst people possible to utilize them against you and your family. Now I don't know if that's a conspiracy or that just seems to be, let's say, like a prophecy that existed before I was born, that things are heading into this direction of collectivizing. So you have to see why did it emerge? What's it pointing to? Well, that's what it's supposed to solve, right? So I think I'm less scandalized by it because I don't see it in a punk sense that our job is to point out the flaws in the system alone. Like, guys, quit trusting it. So, like, when you're talking about the kid who looks a certain way, they're kind of punkish, and you're like, I don't know if that's Christian. Like, there's a way it is Christian in like the gargoyle sense.
Yeah.
In the sense there's the positive monster. So we've gotten closer to someone like Kat Von D, you know who she is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And she's goth. She's like completely like a goth queen now. And I think goth is rad in a really important way, in the sense that if you get to know her, you realize she does not like fake things. It's like, if you want to piss her off, be fake. If you wanted to uh nauseate her, expose her to something that's too fake for too long, right? So the goth thing is like almost like an embracing of decay and death for this purpose of all those things you're participating in are fake and aren't really doing what you think you're doing. So here it is. Okay. So that's fine. That's a good introduction. But the problem is, any of these movements, like, there's a way in which every movement is like designed to call out some other rotten egg somewhere. But what's its good egg it's laying, right? So what good egg is rock and roll how is rock and roll going to scream enough or get loud enough that, that it testifies to the real problem? So I think that's the question about my participation. And so um, for me, there's not a lot of work for Orthodoxy done about how does this tradition flow out of the narthex into the world. Meaning, like, in an evangelical church, they kind of see it as the same. So, like,
Mhm.
someone who does like worship music could go and perform worship concerts. And so, but of course, we think about, let's just say the medium is the message. I experienced firsthand with all the people around me in all these churches is that when you bring a stage and rock into your church, you get the culture. Like, the two things are attached. Like, they don't come separately, because it's not like the church invented the stage in rock and roll, right? So they literally borrowed something that is from the world for the world's purposes. Not that these things can't be redeemed, but when you pull in rock stars and you put someone on a stage, you're going to have a conversation with a worship leader all the time. They're trying to figure out how not to make it about them, because the entire thing is about them. They're on a microphone, they're singing, they're dressed up to look cool, they're playing modern music. We know what to do in that setting. First time, my pastor at the time, this was an absolute problem, but I joined the worship team when I'm like 16. I was like, you know what the song really needs is a guitar solo. And because I work on music all the time, he's like, he needs a guitar solo. He's like, yeah, we don't really do guitar solos. So I was like, yeah, but why not? Like, you did a piano solo the other day. Why, like, let me do a guitar solo. He's like, oh, yeah, oh, yeah. So he was open. And so at this church, like, when it came time for my solo to come up in this song, I like just did what I always do, like moved towards the front of the stage, just started laying in the guitar. And like the teen girls like started screaming and cheering. And it was immediately like, oh no. Like, of course they did. Because this is like, when you went to see my band, that's what would happen, right? So it's like, oh, okay. So when you want to use something, you have to understand it. Like, so
Mhm.
all of these things are accessible in the right setting, maybe not like in that moment at church to deliver the timeless message of Christ through a 20th century zeitgeist. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like a trauma response zeitgeist, that doesn't make sense to me. But there
Now,
was
I
a
will
play.
say we do some contemporary music at my church, and
Yeah.
I lead it, but we lead it from the balcony in the back. So, and sometimes they're scandalized by the fact that they're like, well, it would be helpful to see the singer. And I'm like, it's so much
Yeah.
better that you cannot see the singer. You know
I'd
what I
have to agree
mean?
with you. Yeah. Yeah.
You
I
know,
have to agree with you.
it's like, because like we're all directed that way, you know?
Yeah.
We just have some contemporary instrumentation at one of the services, you know. So,
Yeah.
but again,
So exactly.
Feel
That's
free to
it.
be scandalized by a contemporary
No,
Christian. Like, I get the problem with it, and I think it's architecturally, it's a huge problem to have a stage, to have a band on a stage, and
yeah.
all of that. It's like, but the question isn't whether or not rock should be the worship music in a church. It's just whether or not like rock should be like redeemed for the kingdom, even from like any Christian perspective, but specifically the Orthodox. I mean, I think death metal, I think horror movies, I think it should all be.
Yeah.
It
You
should
know,
all be Christianized.
it has its right place. Well, I mean, you can way to argue that like certain patterns in almost every older horror movies before it was just completely slasher movies had some kind of Christian value. It was always like the immoral people that were that were vulnerable first, right? So in your vulnerability, you make yourself like so in your licentiousness, in your sin, in your fornication, you make yourself open to evil. Like that
Mhm.
idea is like absolutely like it's the same pattern, but also in like hard rock, there was a way where some of these musicians, whether it was Twisted Sister, I'm thinking of some people in the 80s, or like Dio, if you listen to that Twisted Sister record, you could read it either way. You could read it as like the devil's bad and like why would you want to be a part of this, or like I think that's pretty cool. Like so there's like for example, if I drew a picture of like a demon and I meant it to be scary, some people are going to think it's cool. Some people are going to understand like, oh yeah, if that was a real thing, I wouldn't want to help it, do anything.
Right.
So but Ronnie James Dio, I think he really got it. If you're familiar with Dio at all, like he started out in Black Sabbath
Mhm.
after Ozzy, and
Oh,
Dio
okay.
in his song, when the main character was never the victim, because people were gravitating towards this music because they're part of a system, whether it's a dad that they don't like. A lot of often like people gravitate towards hard rock have like dad problems, and so often I've watched people work them out. Like they'll actually take that on head on, and it gives them a way to take it on head on, and they'll actually work some of these problems out over time. Some of the sweetest people I know are like the metalheads that still love the metal, but they're almost like bleeding hearts of compassion for other people because they kind of dealt with the problem. And they use that as part of the medicine for it. So the aggressiveness of it and your attraction to the aggressiveness, like it shows you there's something you're a part of. You want to break out from under it. This is also part of the whole attractiveness. Like, okay, so why are these girls attracted to these bad guys sometimes? It's like, well, because he'll hold to his ground. He's like got a plan. He's got some tools to break you out of your system. Right. If you don't like what you're trapped into, you're going to look for someone, if you're vulnerable, who has the strength to pull you out of the system. So this is the attraction in rock and roll music. So are both of those things I described, is there a good way to inhabit those things? I think, yeah, I think absolutely there is. But if I just run with it thoughtlessly and, I mean, I'm just going to be another voice who's pointing out that there's a rotten egg with absolutely no hope or help for people who are turning to music for some kind of context and understanding, and they want it to be the soundtrack of their life. There's a bad part of us that wants to listen to a miserable song where we're miserable for context, and we want that to spread. But there's also parts of us that want to be lifted out of those things, that want to go higher, and music should have that role in our life. And so when I meet a metal kid, like my friend's going through a divorce, his kid he turned to metal and whatnot. I'm like, I wouldn't worry about it so much, man. Like, this is something he's gonna have to work through. You just got to pay attention to the content. Like, I mean, there might be a better band like Demon Hunter, right? than, some other like I don't know, a band like Wasp that was about perversion or.
Right. Or like Cradle
So
of Filth, you know.
yeah, exactly. So there's gonna
But
be
like
better
listening to the
options.
Chariot, it's like there's some
Yeah.
interesting stuff.
Right. Now, but when someone picks up those genres and says, this genre exists so I can get people saved who like that genre, I think you stepped right out of like the whole artistic process. Like this is another tool for a ideological goal. And it's music smells bad when you do that. So many well-meaning Christians in the West over the years have done this. But
Like the
generally
whole
whatever,
Christian rock thing, and
yeah,
maybe some
whatever
of those
genre.
bands are considered that. I don't know, but probably so. But I get it. Like it's a problem when it feels like propaganda. I will
Well,
say
what
your
happens?
stuff doesn't feel like propaganda, which is
Oh,
great.
thank God. Thank God. Well, it doesn't feel like propaganda to me in the sense that it's like, it's just coming from the place I live in and what I see. I don't know what it can do for people. So like you talked about Firebird a little bit. In Firebird, it's about a concept in Orthodoxy that it might be abstract to a Protestant, but like the beatific vision. And this is it's about a connection with God. You can see the connection alluded to in something like what is faith? So in Hebrews, Paul answers the question, what is faith? Faith is the assurance or the substance of things hoped for, the convictions of things not yet seen. So how do we have a conviction about something we haven't seen before? So when Thomas says, I must put my hands in his wounds to know. And Jesus doesn't rebuke him for this. He says, greater are those who haven't seen and still believe. And Thomas gets sent way the heck out into like India and places where no one knows even of Israel potentially. So how is this connection made? How do we become sure of things we haven't seen yet? Right. So in the beatific vision, there's a way to participate in the world in which everything, its logos, becomes more apparent to you. Meaning, why is a tree shaped this way? Why is there day and night? What are these patterns telling us? In marriage, like what? Well, okay, so the Christianity really at the end of the day is a cosmic marriage. It's a story about uniting with God. So where are the mistresses in the world and how do we avoid those? And what should we really be connecting with? And why is my marriage an experience so I can begin to understand God's love for me and the way he expects us to connect and the differences in the roles and whatnot. So there's a way that only through Christ, we would argue that there is in the church, that there's an opening and a connection to why these things were made in the first place. In other words, if I'm an atheist, I have to assume the brain is purposeless ultimately because there's no way to credential someone who gave it purpose before that. So I use it for a purpose, but it was ultimately purposeless. So we're dealing with a world, we talk about the disenchantment of the world, where everybody looks out and assumes that these things can just exist on their own. Like people like Stephen Hawking say like absolutely moronic things like, oh, because gravity exists, nothing can become something. It's like, bro, you just assumed gravity was nothing. Like where gravity's something. Like even your own statement's incoherent because there's no ultimate first cause. So in the beatific vision, and engage with the Christ in his church, and especially like in an Orthodox church where things are so symbolic, they're like our senses are too weak to see what things are really like in the architecture of the spiritual world. So by constantly engaging those things, we can go out in the world and we can start to see that like, oh my gosh, these things are all here, not just arbitrary. There's absolutely nothing arbitrary, that every shape, every color, and every placement of everything, and every rule, and every natural law, all of these things, like Paul says, the invisible attributes of God are in them. So my advice for artists is always like, that's where you need to go if you want to naturally create Christian music that isn't propaganda. Because otherwise I have a set of goals and outcomes and I'm trying to manipulate the lights and the fog machine and so that someone has an emotional experience where they agree with me. So for the Christian artists, I believe
they should
that
go to church and then they should
like,
do
hey,
their
go to
music.
church, believe in Jesus, stop being a Democrat, stop being a Republican, whatever your message is, right? And so this is part of the propaganda of things. But in the West, we wanted to stop creating and relying on our own traditions and borrowing. In the 20th century, it happened heavily. Actually, I would argue that it really began in a heavy way at Handel's Messiah when that went to the concert hall instead of a cathedral. But so because that was scandalous at the time to play sacred music in a concert hall space. But now that's not a consideration at all. So what ends up happening is Christians can't pick up metal and use it like people in metal do. They can't go out and use all of the powerful forms because some of them, like you pointed out, are just straight out of Christianity. Like if you go see a Gwar concert, like there's a lot of things that aren't Christian, that aren't accessible, that are powerful for that audience that you cannot, your hands are tied if you decide to make music that sounds like Gwar, because you're not going to have giant phalluses running around stage and all these crazy things that are, whether you like it or not, they're powerful images to that audience. They're like why they go to see it. It's like they have all these things accessible. So people pick up these genres and it's like, well, you can't, it's got to be singable one if it's church music. So rock and roll does not have to be singable. Like that's not a requirement. There's plenty of rock songs. Like, dude, when you get to that key change and Living on a Prayer, like good luck if you're not a tenor one getting anywhere close to that as a guy. It's just not singable. And some melodies like now are too complicated. Singers do runs. These are not church things. So those things are off the table, but those things are powerful within the genre. So what you start having is you have something like what happens to a kid's movie sometimes. It's not like Pixar doesn't avoid death in their good movies back in the day. They didn't avoid sadness. They didn't like say, oh, kids can't be sad or scared. They're like, no, we're not going to make kids movies because we took a bunch of things out of a normal movie and called it a kids movie that they aren't ready for. It's like, no, it's a kids movie because of what we put into it. So it's the same for music. So what happens in Western Christian music as they start to pick up these genres, they start to sanitize everything. So you end up with a product that's like Diet Coke. It's like, yeah, it doesn't make me overweight as easily. It's not maybe as bad
You're
for me in
talking
that way.
20th century, like
Yeah, but
Christian
it's
versions of pop.
yes, in
things,
21st
yeah.
century, yeah. And but it doesn't make me gain weight, but it's got a really funny aftertaste. And the aftertaste is because of the artificiality. It can't actually participate in the genre honestly, because of their rules they've implied on it, because they try to bring it into what we would call a sacred space. So once they bring it into the sacred space, they cut off half of the tools for that genre at least. And then they get all of the baggage. They get all of the baggage of what it means to be a rock star when you put rock stars on your stage and you go to their Instagram.
Now, I'm
and
not suggesting
totally
rock
stars.
should be in church.
Yeah. No, I'm
Yeah.
not arguing against you either. I'm just telling you what I think. I'm not even criticizing. I kind of get, listen, I was part of it. It's part of like where I grew up. I can't like sit there and look at these people and think they're idiots. Like I can't be, like I get what they're trying to do and I get the confusion. I'm old enough now where it's like, you could never get me to go back to that. Like I would never do that again. I wouldn't go anywhere near it. Like it was so bad for me. It was bad for my soul. There were some good moments. I took away some good things. So I'm speaking completely from my personal perspective, but also trying to see and test my own perspective to see where are my biases, because with a lot of what has to do to contemporary music, because of my love for it, I want to force it places it doesn't belong because I love it. I absolutely love it. So I don't want to force it where it doesn't belong because you start to lose the thing for what it is. And you lose, so for example, in Orthodoxy, this language of music that was built for the church, it's so powerful at delivering and doing its job that you can't even supplant it with a modern genre. I can't get into rock and roll and make subversive metaphors and have the type of even lyrical subtleties. It's got a point. It's got to declare. And it's got to declare it in a way where the substrate of the music, like the chords and the melody, fit. Like there's some kind of prosody with it. And I think that's so great because the church isn't trying to present something unclear to the people. It's trying to declare who God is exactly as God is. So rock and roll is just like the modern world, as we've got these tools to create better and better realism. Movies and stories are necessarily have to be told with a little bit more of a riddle to it because you don't have to form the whole thing in your head like you used to when you read a book or someone told you a story. If that story was too complicated, you couldn't hold that image in your head. But now because the image is so well realized, even in music, because we have all these tools that we don't have to be as pointed with our message. So that's great. I don't have a problem with that at all. The problem I have with that is that when you bring that into a space that does have to be pointed with this message, that the whole point is to not be unclear and to not be confusing and to make a declaration in a beautiful way. So I think that so what happens is a lot of times when they say to someone, it's like, you can't do that at church. It's like, why can't we do that at church? Like, I love it. I don't have a problem. It doesn't hurt me over here. It's like, yeah, but that's not church over here. And so if you're Orthodox, this is less of a confusing thing because we have actual sacred spaces. In other words, it's ordained for that purpose. It's not a repurposed space just for something else. In other words, like in Protestantism, it's not a weird thing to go hold a worship set or a Christian music set in a nightclub and do the same exact music you would do at church. Like those two spaces, it seems like in their mindset, I understand it. That's suitable for them. Where I've come from now, it's like so much more helpful now to realize no, there's a center of the thing. The center of the thing is trying to be perfectly the thing, right? The edges, as you move away from the thing, the important question for the Christian is, how do I incorporate that thing? Like, how do I not deny that thing? And how do I make that accessible in a way someone over here understands the vocabulary? So I think when I'm making music and we're making these stories or we're writing a libretto for a rock opera, it comes about intuitively, but at the end of the day, I do have a hope for the audience. I have a hope for they wake up. They stop believing all this fake crap. They stop loving all these mistresses that are presenting themselves that are just running them into a dead end alley. That they stop chasing money in the system and politics. Like Father Seraphim Rose says, like that, that turn on the street has been tried and is filled with corpses when you get to the end of the street. There's so many dead ends. And so I think in our tradition, we have something better to point to. I don't know how to go out in a song and point to that with the clarity we would at church, but I do think that maybe we could present that there is a longing for Eden in every man and woman who live, that there's this unfulfilled sense in us that's there on purpose and it's meant only to be satisfied in God. And maybe even pointing out that that's real, that they're not just some arbitrary existent thing that it won't matter they were here 1,000 years from now, that they've always been intended to be here in a way, and that they're cared for and that there are answers. Like that's kind of what I'd hope. I basically hope with a capital H is what we hope someone would have. But there's no way, there's like literally no way for me to put the answer at the end of the day on a record that's any good that says the answer is the Orthodox Church. Like that's not why you make records. I make records because I love music and I want to hear them, and they come from our worldview. So
I always feel like, I mean, granted, I'm not Orthodox, but I feel like
yeah, you hang around a lot of Orthodox people,
I
Matthew.
hang a lot,
You're familiar in a cursory
I feel like
sense,
the
for
answer
sure.
would be like, well, just become Orthodox and then do your music. You know what I mean? And it's like, and the better that you are at being Orthodox, the more it will inevitably seep into your music in a legitimate way that doesn't like make it propagandistic.
I think you're heading in the right direction. I think you're heading in the right direction there, because I do say something like that, but also like the idea that like there are skills you need to pick up, in the sense that like we can have intentions. It's like, hey, well, I'm trying to love my wife, but it's not going so well. She seems to be misinterpreting my actions. Like, well, there's a skill missing to translate what I think is supposed to happen to it. So, I think there are tools that someone could be a perfect Christian and never have, that they would need to for that situation. They might not have that screwdriver in the sense of like, or beat their head against the wall trying to do it. Because again, if you don't recognize like the disenchantment in the world, if you don't recognize that like people they look and see a different yard when they go. I was just in Ventura, California at my friend's house, and there were mountains behind us. It's just really wonderful. What I love about the coast in California is like a complete symbolic image. It's got the trees, the mountains, the sky, the clouds, the ocean. It's got civilization. It's got everything to look at in it.
Communism.
It's got the I avoid politics. I don't really think about politics very much, Matthew. But yes, it's got communism, and so
I have a
when you're
very
out there,
apolitical channel. Sometimes I just can't help myself by throwing in
we can't help ourselves
California or whatever.
We can't help ourselves because there's 95% of my audience. If we show them this interview, they would think they were listening to a Republican or a Democrat, depending on their view. They don't know how to see outside of that lens.
Everything is political.
Yeah. But I mean, but what happened with politics, the same thing that happened with the bad parts of Christianity, it became a marketing pitch. It's a product. So like people don't realize they're like watching a show selling a product all the time. Like they're going to get mad at me for saying like completely normal, down to earth things. Happens all the time. So, that's part of the thing we're navigating here too. So I think that what's hard right now in the 21st century, if you were an Orthodox Christian and you came into the church and you were like, I'm an artist, I'm going to bring my art back out in the world. That's something people do all the time. There is a overreaction to maybe what's happened in the evangelical world or in the West to like, well, we can't do that thing because it's been done wrong before, and everybody's going to associate that we're like copying that thing, and they're going to import all of the wrong things. And so like the idea that there's going to be like a Orthodox Christian music scene out in the world is like, that's almost like an anathema to the thinking, because, well, we see it all the time. Come up, say this prayer and get your pizza, and now you're a Christian. I was a part, when I was in charismatic churches, I was part of Christian bands and stuff that like did altar calls. I never did the altar call myself. I thought there was something wrong with me because they cringed me out. They cringed me out because it didn't make any sense that I'm just going to drive up into this town. We're going to you have this big emotional concert, like say a couple of things that will never be, it's never the gospel. It's never really what Christ did. It's about like how you are saved, right? It's not, it's the idea of how you're saved. And that we would just, people would raise hands and come up and stuff. And then like you come back into the town like 6 months later and no one was anywhere to be seen in any church anywhere. And I was like, and then the thing that really threw me off on it, I finally found a guy who was sitting, we went back into a town. It was Lowell, Massachusetts. And I'm doing this show and when I got done, I didn't recognize anybody there from the last show. We had like 30 people come up. Now, mind you, I'm the one guy in the band is like, we shouldn't do this. Like, so, which I also think it might be a problem with my heart that like, what's wrong with my heart that I don't want to see these people be saved? Well, it was completely confirmed. I found a guy and there were some other people I found after this, but it was the first time I ever found this scenario. I was like, hey, how's it going since we came here? He's like, yeah, man, I tried what you guys were talking about. It didn't work. And I was like, oh, that's what I was afraid of. I was afraid that like, the invitation into Christ is into his body, which is the church.
Mhm.
It's not an invitation to respond at a rock concert. And whatever emotional context we've just set up, it struck me as such a bad idea eventually. So,
I'm
okay,
reminded
so
of
what?
the "Thank You Jesus" placards that people put in their yards. Have you seen these?
Yeah. Yeah.
And and a family member put one in my yard, and I immediately took it away. And they were like, "What? You don't love Jesus?" I'm like, "I just don't like being cringy." It's like, if you want to build me like a beautiful like statue of Christ or something, I'll put it in my front yard. I'm not ashamed of Jesus, but I am ashamed of this stupid placard that people are gonna think that I'm tacky. So
Uh, Yeah, I mean, that was always my thing too, right? Because it kind of smells like there's like a baby powder smell to the culture, my wife Kate says. She's like, when you get into these kind of performative, nice cultures where things are kind of cleaned up, because like, I mean, we're closer to goth, I think. We're more memento mori type people. Like we could see positive things in deathly images and stuff like that. So we're obviously not going to be the Cracker Barrel, Christian with the thank you on the lawn. Like, obviously, there's nothing wrong with putting "Thank You, Jesus" on your lawn. The problem is the context. Like for all these things, it's like, okay, so what does the context suggest? For me, it's like, well, I meet these people all the time, and they're so performative Christians. Like they're Ned Flanders. Ned Flanders is like, I love the way they handle him on The Simpsons because he's actually a good guy. Like he's not a bad guy, but he has this real compulsion that as a Christian, he needs to be seen as nice all the time. And I meet people like that all the time because, like, well, if you're soteriology, in other words, how you are saved is, um, I'm saved already. And what do I do now? Well, my job is to witness. Well, how do I witness? You show people that Christ has changed your life and you tell them about these things. Well, I think that's going to tilt towards performative action in the sense that if you're like, well, I may be this way. I might really feel this way, but I want to put on this face. I want everybody to think I'm really nice, and I keep smiling even though there's not a real smile in me. Um, I feel like those two things. I feel like the "Thank You Jesus" sign on the lawn and that are like totally connected for me in my head, which is why I don't. It's not me
I mean, my
because I.
family members who use it, they're great. They're sincere. They're real Christian believing people. But I
Yeah,
get
of course.
exactly,
My
but I get
parents are like
exactly what
this.
you're saying. I
Yeah,
would,
my parents are
I
like this.
can't,
Yeah.
I can't do it. I can't put the stupid, like, yes, plasticky sign in my yard.
Well, and after being around a performative culture for a while and living in those, I have like a real, real black pill against it, I guess, in the sense that it's like I can't do it anymore. I can't I just get way less comfortable with it. And also, it's like a hack. It's like maybe I should actually find love for people and let that flow out however love flows out, as opposed to my idea of what this person wants to see me doing right now. So they feel like I'm a nice Christian. Like, I just felt like it was like, okay, yeah, there are times, like, for example, if you're like teaching a bunch of little kids music, Matthew, you're not going to talk like you're talking to me. You're going to reduce your vocabulary. That's not really you. But also at the same time, it is really you because you're translating yourself to that audience, right? That's
Right.
different than like creepers who come in and try to teach at school and they're trying to be nice for a different reason. So you never know. So I don't like performative niceness. I don't like performative kindness. I think Christians have gotten destroyed because of people who are always pulling back in the nice department. For example, by 2016 came around, it was like you couldn't say jack about anything. It was like anything I said in an interview was going to be misunderstood. There were like these bullies that people really believed, like, so people who are involved in a more moral therapeutic Christianity, which is most people in the West, which is the idea, like Mr. Rogers. Like, we're talking about Mr. Rogers right now. No, like, not to hate Mr. Rogers, but should it be valuable to me as a child? I'm watching Mr. Rogers. He starts trying to give me reasons to love myself, and he's the credential for it. Like, I love you, and I'm your, like, there's this performative quality. It's like, listen, you can never have enough of that and feel secure. Like, it'll never end. Like, that's not where you find it in this moral therapeutic, like, or self-credentialing of like, I'm like, self-affirmation kind of culture. Well, a lot of people are involved in that. And so telling someone the truth, even in a kind way, is too much for them. And they back off on it. So by 2016, we really kind of needed someone to roll up and just start looking like a jerk, so that we could actually talk about these things again. Because, like, myself, I was a little bashful about it. Like, the culture is just going off the rails, and people get offended when you say something, and so I kind of don't say something, right? So there's that aspect of. So that's my jaundice against performative niceness. Because when you're worried about, I don't want to hurt people's feelings, it's like, well, Jesus called the Pharisees a brood of vipers, or the Sadducees. Like, I mean, like, there's a place. There's a place. There's a place for it. It's not like that does not license to go around and be an a-hole. But I think that we have the total wrong idea about those kind of things, and it bleeds into like Western Christian movies and music.
I hate those. I've always said the most Christian movie I've ever seen is Godfather Part 2.
I want the podcast where you defend that. I like it.
No, because it's like, I think it's about what you're glorifying. Like, I was telling someone this today. Like, How I Met Your Mother is glorifying hookup culture.
Mhm.
So you think it's like it's relatively okay because there's nothing crazy dark in it, But I'm not sure Breaking Bad or Godfather Part 2 is actually glorifying sin as a good thing. It's actually showing the consequences of it. I mean, Michael is in his chair alone at the end. There is no family dinner. Like, his empire has dissolved.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, like, that's a morality play. That's
you have
straight
me
up.
at hello. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, we can talk about it longer to convince the audience who doesn't agree with us. But I think you're absolutely right. So, like, for example, the Bible doesn't clean up its dark characters. I mean, obviously, it's not a film. So the problem with there's a problem with film is that you're on your wall, whatever you're watching. Like, have you ever done this? You have kids yet or no?
I have two. I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old.
We're watching a
awesome.
movie. It's an 80s horror movie. It's not bad. There's a slightly gruesome, scary scene happening. Kid knocks on her bedroom door to come in. I pause it. Kate's like, you can't pause it on that frame. It's like a guy getting his head cut off or something like that, right? And I was like, oh, yeah, that's a picture on my wall right now. That's different. Like, okay, so the problem is that I think when we think about it the way you're talking about, I think you're absolutely right. I think there obviously is a line, like, that you can cross because you have to tell the character. So in the Bible, when they talk about David, sleeping with Bathsheba, you can talk about that and never have to really totally, like, picture a scenario where he's like trying to seduce her or something like that. You don't have to go there. How do we get that across in a film? It's really boring if someone just says it happens later, right? Like, you handle as a matter of exposition. So, because I had to deal with this problem in a film I made where I'm really alluding to what's coming out about Epstein and stuff, and Elon Musk on the other side of things, and trying to avoid that. And so all the characters are bad in that capacity. But it's like, okay, so in a 1920s film that I want everybody to watch, how do I allude to, in the way the adults get, that this culture goes off the rails without showing anything scandalous? Right?
Oh man, what was the? I was talking to the Jordan guy who did the El Tonto por Cristo.
Oh yeah.
And I forget now I forget the name of the movie, but the guy was like the godfather of French art, like artistic cinema. I'm not remembering it. But what's amazing is how much drama he'll show, and it'll just be he'll hold a frame like on a doorknob. and you'll hear what's going on behind and not
Yeah.
see anything, and
Mhm.
it's perfect. It's like you know exactly what happened
Yeah.
without saying. So there is a way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so it's a matter of so you have to have a line. So, for example, like a priest. So there's all these things in the Orthodox tradition, like fasting, that in certain aspects of the tradition that are very difficult if you haven't built up the muscle to participate. For two reasons. One, because like let's say I go to a Russian church and I stand for 3 hours. First time I went to a Russian church and stood for 3 hours, my lower back was not ready for that. Took a little time, right?
Right.
Okay. So, but there are other things like that. Let's just say fasting. It's like, well, how much fasting can you do and how completely can you do the fast, right? Now, offering
Bresson. Sorry, his name is
what?
Bresson.
Bresson.
Yeah,
You ever say it like that? Bresson. Oui, oui.
Bresson.
All right. I'll look that up.
Yeah,
You thought of it.
and pickpocket. That's the
The
big
film.
film.
Bresson Pickpocket.
It's amazing.
Okay.
It's like an hour and a half. It's like an hour and 20. But
Mm.
worth a watch. Anyway, you're in a Russian cathedral. You're standing for 3 hours.
Yeah,
That's where you were. Sorry.
Priest is like, next time it hurts, sit down. Right. And then build up. But also they'll offer you what's called economia. So in other words, it's like, well, this is part of our tradition. So listen, how about you fast in this way for the first time or try just to do this and see how it goes. If that feels like it's not enough, let's add a little more. If it feels like it's too much, we'll see if we can dial it back. Or the priestess might say this should be your minimum. The priest cannot offer economia like outside of things that would be an actual sin. For example, like, oh, you're having an affair. Well, reduce the amount of times you have the affair. That's better, right? It's not a pragmatic thing like that. It's like, no, you don't sin at all. Like, go and sin no more is still part of the message. So, I forgot why we brought this up originally because I got a little rabbit trailed on the movie idea
Sorry.
there. No, it's okay. So one of the things you have to think about when you're making films or you're making music or whatever, it's like, okay, I use that as my range. So in other words, if I'm making a movie, if I show violence, it's fake. If I show someone's breast, it's real. Right?
Right.
If you go and you say a phrase you should never say or something like that, it's actually was said. So there's like you have to navigate without doing like it's not a marmish cleanup. In other words, like a marm does this. So I was talking to someone the other day. They were mad about Christian debate culture or something like that. They think the people that debate are too mean. I said, well, did they offend you? He's like, oh, no, not me. I'm just worried about other people who follow their example. I said, okay, think about that. Because this happens all the time. Like, you're not allowed to chew tobacco on a plane, right? But you're allowed to chew gum. You're not allowed to chew tobacco because it makes people think of cigarettes and this is a bad addiction and the moms don't like it. So they outlaw tobacco on planes. But it's not like people are sticking chewing tobacco under the seats. You might get offended by someone chewing smelly tobacco next to you, but I get offended by people chewing awful gum all the time next to me too. I'm not offended. I can handle it. You know what I'm saying? But I don't like it. There's nothing about I would prefer it to stop. So there's also the impulse on why people want to clean things up. And part of it is really, I think, something like hijacking compassion, like we want to protect babies, like from bad babies or bad people. I think I've heard it said that way before, and that makes perfect sense to me. People are having less kids; they're trying to replace it with dogs. Our politics seems to be moving into a mothering phase. So the artist also has to pay attention to because there's a time to use a word. There's a time to use the thing, right? Because you have to wake someone up. This is what rock and roll's saying. It's like, listen, you're not paying attention. You're not paying attention to the problem. That's what punk music really said in the 70s. Like, none of you are paying attention. We're done with it. So there's a reason to be loud and there's a reason to swear. I mean, there's some pretty harsh language used in the Bible. It's just a matter of is it serving its purpose? Is it the right time and place? So directors can use ideas like that as license too, but like there's a line you cross. Like, no, you actually asked like a 19-year-old woman to be naked in the scene, right? And there's also it's like, yeah, this is a 30-year-old woman who's behaving sexually in a kids movie, or like Jessica Rabbit. It's a cartoon version, but I mean that's the little kids are watching that. So you wonder why people think Hollywood's full of these type of files, pedestrians, to avoid the YouTube algorithm cancelization. So you wonder, it's already happening in a degree. So we don't want to participate in that degree, but you got to tell the story in a way that's like real and it hits. And so this is the challenge the Christian artist has, because it's the same challenge that like a noble country has in war against a country that's willing to use mustard gas or any tactic. It's that like, well, we can't win the war in a way that's too far, but also it's war, right? So that's part of, I think, was when filmmaking is going on, is like the question that people have to be able to answer for themselves is like, yeah, you could show the bad guy doing all kinds of things. Like, so there's an example of a song which is kind of a roast of materialism we have called Enchanté.
Mhm.
And the hook of the song is about what happens when your world becomes disenchanted. Well, you have no higher spirit, so you go to lower spirits. Like if you in the hook is, if you can't raise the dead, you're going to raise hell instead. We're going to raise hell instead is the line. And so we have a lot of lines like that in our song. Like, I don't want someone to live by that, but I want them to know that idea is true. So, in other words, if you hear that, you should realize that, like, yeah, the reason you're attracted to these vices because there's a lack of virtue, there's a lack of higher meaning and higher spirits, and so you have to replace these things. You have to redirect that energy into the right place. But in the song Enchanté, there's someone the other day who like got it tattooed on their arm, that line, because it's their motto. Yeah, I'm gonna raise hell, right? Because what I said was true. But what I said was not like an instruction about how you should live. My line was more about like how human anthropology is going to function. So this is the challenge the director has to deal with, because I don't think that what I did was wrong in that at all. But mind you, the people that want to protect the babies, well, what if they hear that and they decide to do it? It's like, yeah, God gave people hands they can punch with. I don't know what to tell you, lady. Like, what I said was true. It's what will happen. So this is going to be, I think that's just going to be a product of what it means to do non-liturgical art for the rest of my life. Is this going to be a
The problem
constant
of
battle against
self-censorship.
yeah, it's going to be it's not even censorship. It's like, I really want it to be good with a capital G. And so I don't even think of it as censorship. I think of it like, is it true? Like, is this the best way to show that in this context? And so that's the challenge. So there are songs I got this,
What's
our
the
last
phrase,
record.
like all true, all beauty is true, but not all truth is beautiful?
Yeah, that's probably a good way to say it. I have to think about that for a while. Not all beautiful. Beauty's true. Well, I mean, the problem is the way, you and I understand the word beauty. Yes, that's true. The way the world understands the word beauty, that's not true, because there are things that are beautiful all the time that are not true to people. They would describe them as beautiful anyway, whether or not they're actually beautiful. Like, that category is a transcendental for us, so it
When it's
has a
true
different
beauty.
function. It's
True
true
beauty.
beauty. Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
when it's not just
Yeah.
yeah, provoking the
And beauty
yeah.
hurts, man. It's not wildflowers and daisies and someone running through it with a sundress on, enjoying the
The end of
sunbeams.
Godfather 2 is
Right.
beautiful.
Right. Beauty is like, it shows us in a way that we're at a distance from something we really want. Like, and it's painful. Like, there's a real heft and weight to real gratitude. It's not just like a cheeky kind of smile, man. Like, I get to church and I don't know where I'd be without this stuff. You're not talking to like a paragon of the faith right now. You're talking to an artist who happens to be an Orthodox Christian, and it's really the most important thing to me. But I swerve and I sway, and um, I'm so grateful for what I have. And so that gratitude does not sit on me like a smile. It sits on me like a heavy thing, like a thing that would make you cry.
Mhm.
And that's beautiful, right? But so it just depends on your definition of beauty. So at the end of the day, like, I don't know, when you're making something, it's like, it's got to be powerful. It's got to, like, I was convinced of that when I was young. I went to a Van Halen show. I was like 13. I shouldn't have been at this concert. Like, I don't know why my parents let me go to this concert with my older brother. That we had, like, it was a mess. There was like a girl doing coke next to me on her leg with a razor blade, and she cut into her leg and started laughing. And it was like, oh, like, holy crap, I'm in trouble. But Eddie Van Halen got up, man, and he just came to the edge of the stage and, like, whatever. There's like all kinds of things that are fraught about a rock concert in the late 1980s, early 90s. But you could see that there was something he was doing that was so moving. And it was like, it made me believe like a human being could be more than it could be. Like, that there was something more going on in the world. And I was like, that's what I want. That's why I want to pick up music. So, um, I picked up music because I wanted to share that. Like I want people to be surprised. I want the veil to be lifted. I want those moments where the hair stands up on your arm. It's like you're like, oh, I'm in the, it's like the hair stands up on our arm because it's like we're scared or we're in awe. And I don't want people to be now like where I started. It was like I wanted people to be impressed with me, like but like I'm growing up a little bit maybe where it's like no, there's something way better to point to than like I'm good at this. There's something much better to point to, and if we have an experience with us on the stage and it's not even explicitly a Christian song, and the audience is having that experience too, that enjoyment is going to testify to something greater. So it's going to testify to real purpose. And even in that moment, it can shake people up out of their cold materialism a little bit to, I can't explain this. This doesn't make sense. It was given to us for a reason. I felt like there was a veil lifted. I felt like I was more connected to the people around me. I felt like I was connected to God some way. People have this experience. I think those are great things. And so the artist can't censor themselves necessarily because part of what you have to do to create a satisfying release in the end, like the idea that, oh, that was a satisfying chord change or something like that, means that I have to create tension. And to create tension, you have to upset the apple cart in some way or another. And there's all kinds of ways to create tension. There's harmonic tension. There's rhythmic tension that doesn't add up for people that you can resolve. There's lyrical tension. You can get
some of
so
it is just the box you put yourself in.
Yeah.
It's like you can be true within a box.
Yeah, but all the people we love, man, they're not kidding when they're doing this. Like all the stuff that really moves us, like this is a radical commitment to beauty. And
But I would say, like, for example, like Sir Charles Hubert Parry, the great English
not
composer.
super familiar, but I know the name. Yeah. You
well,
get past
but like a classical composer, like in their style. So Parry's writing in like the English style. Like he could say whatever he wants, but he confines himself to that box, and that box is all that he needs, and you can have all the big moments. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the box is super important.
If you're writing liturgical music, you have to write within a box. Like you can't just break the box.
Yeah, well, everything. I don't think there's anything we like where we can't tell what the heck the box is. This is a problem I have all the time. Where people can't put us in a box, they don't know what to do with it. Like, because they don't know the game and they don't know if we're playing the game well. So think of the box as the court the game is played on. So, hey, you wrote a symphony. Symphony has rules, right? So here's what I loved about Brahms. Brahms innovated within the conventions that were already existing. He innovated, but he respected the convention. So people could tell the game how he was modifying the rules and how he got those rules to participate and how he made it beautiful at the same time. This is even what pop song, we have like a kind of a standard for it. There's all kinds of ways that those that it's governed. Like, so for example, radio has had a governance in pop songs. So at first, the length of a pop song was determined by the side, how much music you could fit on a single record, which was like 2.5 minutes, 2 minutes and 45 seconds. You try to fit more on that, it starts to sound worse and worse and worse. So you could fit more at your peril. So that's why you go back to the 60s, you pull up Signed, Sealed, Deliver by Stevie Wonder, and it's like, a lot happens in 2 minutes and 20 seconds, like however long it is. It's like, and it feels like a full song, right? So there's like a practical reason. Then there's also radio. Radio's like, well, if you don't like the song, we don't want a song on for so long that you leave, right? So there's practical reasons, conventions, and then there's also like, well, this is our ensemble. So you were asking a question via text about like, what's a rock opera? It's an opera with a rock band. There's a libretto, right? It's got the same conditions. It doesn't have the same structural conditions as far as like the length or where does the halftime appear or something like that. When's the movement end? It doesn't have those kind of things, but it's basically like, no, we have a libretto and this is the ensemble we have to tell that story.
Now let me ask, like, so I really like Firebird, but like your genre of music is not a genre that I listen to a lot. You know what I mean?
Is it how would you name the genre? This is a problem for us. It's hard to name it, isn't it?
Like rock opera is kind of like what.
Love it. I'll go with it. Yes.
It's now Firebird has this like 80s feel stuff to it.
Yeah.
Almost. Yeah. I'll wait on this question, but yeah, I'll just ask it. have an impossible question for you, and it's related to all of it, okay? And you're gonna be like, this is a stupid, impossible question. What's the deal with Prince? I don't get Prince. Like, I've tried almost anything that like I didn't like. I could listen to enough of it and I could get it, you know. And I like the '80s. I like a little of like the way you use the '80s sound, you know, like the doo 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 doo, you know.
Oh yeah, those
like,
rototoms. Yeah, the 80s toms.
it's great, you know. I love
Thanks.
the '80s synth. It's like that's occasionally used. Like no
I
problem.
got an orchestra in there too.
Yeah,
You know,
it's
got a
good.
choir in there in parts. It's a little different than just standard 80s, but yeah, I know.
No,
Well,
no,
I
no, no.
love.
It's not standard. It's not
Yes,
standard '80s. But
no, but
I
I'm
feel
intentionally
like,
adding that flavor. You're right.
but I feel like you like Prince, and I don't. I don't know. I've never been able to grow an appreciation for Prince.
Okay. So here's a problem we have. So the thing is that when I'm talking to you and I talk to you about drinking a glass of water, you're completely assuming, I think rightfully so, that our experiences are similar. In other words, I drink water. I feel what water feels like in my mouth. I know what that's like. I know what is satisfying to quench the thirst. We have those same exact experience. And in fact, I think we probably have a very similar idea of what it means to be thirsty and what that feels like and what it tastes like. The problem is that with so many this plurality of genres and music that are so specific to types of people and situations in their life, we all of a sudden butt up against something where we realize our experience in the world. There's a communion breaking when someone really loves something you don't. It's like, whoa, hold on. Like there's something really upsetting about the game. It's like, does the sun feel the same for us? How do I know when you look at blue, you see blue? It's actually causing that kind of like, this is why we think we can talk each other into liking music we don't. Like, we'll try. It's like, no, you don't understand. Like, I didn't like the song. Yeah, I don't like Prince. So what do we do? Like, you don't like Prince because you don't like Prince. So Timothy Batista's, I asked him a similar question to this. It was a weird one, but it relates. I was like, what do I do with art galleries now? Like, I never know what to do in an art gallery. Like, I always feel like it was what they were telling me to do was never like the right way to go through an art gallery. I feel like there's something weird going on. He's like, here's how I would say, Neil. He's like, you go in and you're like a panther. There's a meal waiting for you in here somewhere, and you don't care about what's around. Like, you don't care. You don't have to investigate everything. You wait till you're drawn to something, and then you go and eat it. Like, he's like, that's the way I would go through it if I were you.
Oh,
Right?
that's exactly what I do. Like when I went to like La Reina Sofia in Madrid, and
Mhm.
I just found the El Greco crucifixion and just sat in front of it for like half an hour. And it's like
Right.
I don't remember anything else about that museum except like that El Greco crucifixion. So it's like
It's
that's
super cool
exactly how
painting. You picked
it's
the right one.
awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So you picked the right one there. That I really haunted by that picture too. So anyway, okay, so Prince. I don't love Prince. I think Prince is amazing. I think Prince is an absolute musical genius. I love Prince's hit songs. I love almost all of his hit songs. When I get into his record, I'm kind of like, eh. I watched Prince perform. I think he gave one of the best halftime show performances, period. In the Rain, actually performed, like he didn't lip sync. I've seen him a number of times, and he's just a strange figure overall. So part of like especially in the 80s, part of like the fashion of things is that the new thing would always have something that kind of like held up a middle finger to the old thing or something.
Mhm.
Your parents' thing, for example, that was like a big thing for a while. Like if it didn't, if your parents could totally get it, it wasn't for you. It wasn't your thing yet. It had to have something they didn't understand. At the same time, Prince is mostly participating in these other aspects, but he's a surprisingly small man, which is interesting because he's got such confidence and personality when he performs. Um, he dresses like a 1980s hybrid of a medieval prince, right? Royalty and with 80s colors and purple, and he has this very specific, there's no mistaking who Prince is when you see him.
Mhm.
Okay, this is the same with like some people look at Salvador Dali's music, I mean his art, and they're like, it's so weird, I don't get it. It's like he's so random. It's like he's anything but random, guys. Like if he was 80 years old or 20 years old and you saw a photograph of him, he had the same look. Like he was so specific. Like you could pick his painting out from anyone's. ever. Like,
Right.
that's incredibly hard to do. Like, I'm not saying I'm the hugest Dolly fan, although I do really enjoy aspects of Dolly. But at the same time, like, it's not what you think it is. So, okay, so Prince, I'm probably mostly with you on Prince. I know people that love everything Prince did. But as someone who does what he does to some degree, and you realize he's played like 40 different instruments on his record, he's like, this is so, what he's doing is so intuitive to him. He's like really honestly a fantastic guitar player who no one ever talks about as a guitar player because he did 70 other things. You know, it wasn't like he was just a guitar player. I'm known for this. So Prince was a hard guy to get it for the people to get their head around. But yeah, anyway, in Prince's music, I think that's what we're impressed with because I'm a human being. I have a human body. I know how hard these things are to do. I know how hard it is to perform like Prince does so effortlessly. I know how hard it is to master multiple different disciplines like engineering and music and arranging. And he's so good at all these things that because I live in a human body, I'm super impressed with what Prince is able to do in his human body, which is ultimately my case against AI music. Like, we don't care about things like we care about basketball players because we have a body and we can't do what they did with it. And that's why we have all. If, you know,
I think the live performance is going to be absolutely humongous
in the future.
coming up. You
I
didn't
agree.
did you see my interview with Jordan Hall about where we talked
No,
AI
I didn't know you talked to
music?
Jordan. Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
we've done a couple so far, but there's one that I just released like a couple weeks ago where I was trying to give him my business idea, which I'm probably never going to do anything with because, you know, it's whatever. But whoever comes up with the way to certify that music is totally human made has $1 billion business on their hands.
Yeah.
Because in the next 5 years, like, you will pay for that stamp, you know? Like,
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Well, two, again, I think that so there's a novelty. So let's imagine like I use the basketball analogy. Okay, we build robots that can play basketball better than humans. Then the amount of time people will care about that is very short. Especially if the robots started building themselves. Because the thing that impresses us at first is that a human being had the knowledge, whether they borrowed it mostly from everyone else and then added their one little bit to the end. Like Isaac Newton says, we stand on the shoulder of giants, therefore we see farther. You know, we're pygmies, they're giants, right? It might be that situation, but as human beings, we're fascinated by someone who was able to use their intelligence to build a robot that could do this.
mhm.
As soon as the robots start building each other, like the AI music making itself or whatever, it's kind of boring because now the human achievement, because we have this experience in a human body, we don't have a point of comparison for that. We don't care about any technology that doesn't have to do with us. We can't. Meaning in the sense that you can't. You care about a car because it's better than your legs going long distances. But you have legs. You only care about things that extend or amplify what you already have inherent to the human system. You don't care if I invented a device that can count a certain number of molecules on Mars, if that counting those molecules on Mars doesn't benefit a human in some way. Just the fact that it has a power, the power has to directly benefit a human. So that's part of the role of technology. So we understand it's a force multiplier.
I like the body thing. I like
The body. Yeah, we have a
yeah.
body. We have a body. You have a body. So like I'm 53 in a couple of weeks. I can't dunk a basketball anymore, right? If I saw a 53-year-old dunk a basketball, I'd be super impressed. Who is my height? Because I know that I kept myself in pretty good shape, but I can't get up there anymore, right? So I'd be like, oh my gosh, how did you do this? Like, I'd want to know. There'd be a certain sense of awe because another human being of the same qualifications figured out how to get themselves to do more than I ever could.
They followed the knee over toes guy protocol is what they did.
Yeah, what was that? Knee over toe? Oh, knee over toes? Okay. Yeah,
You know
I
that
thought you
guy?
said that as one word.
You know that guy,
Yes.
the knee over toes guy? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you don't want to hurt your knees. You got to keep that form. So yeah, okay. So that's that's what I think is going on with all of that.
It has to do with the human body. It's like,
yeah, it's anthropological. Like we understand like how the idea of like machine grabbing consciousness like out of thin air. It's like this is also obviously based on a false premise on what a spirit is or how consciousness exists in the first place, that it's emerged from random processes that created a brain is kind of a really dumb idea, because if it was emerged from your brain as a series of random consciousness of traits that developed your consciousness, how could you ever trust it? We can only trust it because there's a credential behind it as a Christian because, oh, God made us to have an experience that we could understand and validate. Otherwise, through every other lens, you can't. Okay, why did I bring this up? We were talking about the human body and anthropology. That's why I brought it up.
Because that's your solution to like AI. Like people will only care that it's like music because we were talking about Prince.
Yeah,
we were
I mean, if
contextualizing rock opera.
yes, right. No, I get
and
it.
in
Yeah.
my mind, rock opera is related to Prince, even though like I much prefer your music to Prince. Just saying. So by me saying like I don't neither understand rock opera and I don't like Prince is not like casting aspersions because like
Okay.
I really enjoyed Firebird, but like
Thank you.
just talking in this genre of music that is not
Okay, so
that
what's
I'm not
different about it?
super acclimated to, you know.
Yeah, no, that's great. So, what do you think? What do you think resonates with you more than, let's say, other bands that have done rock operas, or if that's what you're saying, or
See,
other
so this would
acts?
be like the other part of my question is like if I wanted to understand rock opera, who else is rock opera? Like is
Oh, there's a
Queen
ton of
rock
them.
opera?
Well, Queen more in the sound than they actually wrote a libretto, like a libretto meaning an overarching story. For people who might not know that word, I know you do. So, Radiohead did a rock opera. They called it, but okay, let's be really clear. There's a slight difference between a rock opera and a concept record. So Pink Floyd is doing a concept record when they do The Wall.
Okay.
Okay, Computer's doing a concept record when they do The Wall. A rock opera is more like Tommy by The Who, in the sense that there is, in a concept record, there's an overarching story, but its relationship to the actual music is not non-expositional. Meaning
Okay.
you're not trying to explain the story through the songs. The stories might be something that happens in a musical. Like there's two things that can happen in a musical. One would be like, all right, let's explain the plot for a little while in this song so we can get the premise. Another one might be like, oh, here's a moment that just happened, and we're going to pause and explore the moment, like celebrate the feeling. Like, let's just imagine two lovers coming together for a kiss in a musical. It's not going to be exposition necessarily. It's going to be about things that the exposition is going to be in the moment itself. The song is going to be more like a poetic reflection. I'll give you an
And the
example of
latter
this.
is not rock opera or is rock opera?
The one that's more of a reflection of the story or driven by the story as far as its ideas, but not necessarily explaining the story, that's more of a concept record. Concept record isn't restricted from explaining elements of the story. So we're, for the most part, doing something closer to a concept record,
Okay.
except on Queen
like
of the
Good
Night,
Kid,
maybe.
Mad City. I don't know if you like rap, but like Kendrick Lamar's Good Kid, Mad.
I don't know. I don't listen to Kendrick Lamar. Sorry.
Okay.
I do like his taste in cars. But anyway, I did always like that Grand National. Um, he likes. So anyway, moving back around to that. So yeah, a rock opera would be something like you can follow the story when you listen to it. So Queen of the Night's a little closer to that. But when you, in the Raven Locks, another record we made, but Dead Horse and Firebird are definitely pure concept records. I
Okay.
almost never use like character names. You know, I mean, for example, like in a musical, you might sing about another character. I never like do that explicitly. So this is also a weird thing we don't think about too much, but like go find me a song from the 1800s that isn't like a story about something or describing something. So it's like when you get into, oh, I don't know, like the future where we live now, for example, is really clear. Like it could just be a bunch of random impressions, your song lyrics are, with like a chorus that barely ties it together, but we get the gist of it, right? But the idea that it's like an Irish pub song, like you would never sing that song in an Irish pub. People are like, why are we singing this song? What's it about? Right? Like the same complaint your mom had, like, what's this song about? Right? Just got a bunch of random imagery, is what it feels like. So we're kind of pushing back against that a little bit in the sense that we still do have like a lot of abstract concepts coming across musically. But at the same time, like the song's about something. It's not just a random reflection.
So in that way, rock opera is not really a genre. It's more like a style of album.
It's an attitude. Yeah. So, but there are different versions of this for concept record. Well, no, a concept record would be a style of album. A rock opera, I think, would be a specific story you're trying to tell. So, and again, we've done that. And I think Jesus Christ Superstar is a musical, but it's also a rock opera. Why is it a rock opera? Because it, in that case, is because it decided to take on the current modern form of rock music and do the musical as, you know, put that story to rock music. And it also functioned as a record before it did a musical. So like they were recording songs from Jesus Christ Superstar before the musical existed. So I've encountered a bunch of musicals like that. So that would be my, like, these aren't hard categories, like in the sense of there's firm boundaries. There's all kinds of rule breaking, but rock opera, I think the story is more explicitly known to the listener than a concept record. Like, what the heck's Pink Floyd's The Wall about? They made a movie and people don't know what it's about, you know?
Yeah.
It's more about a concept. It's more about a personification of a concept.
Well, other musicians, would you say, is your style most like that are influences on it?
You have to go back. You have to go back to bands like Queen or the Beatles or Pink Floyd. A band of the 80s, a bunch of 80s bands. But when we're talking specifically, not necessarily about the sound of the music, but the style, like a rock opera or a concept record, really loved a Christian band of the 70s called Second Chapter of Acts. They made one of my favorite like rock operas. It was around the Chronicles of Narnia. It's called The Roar of Love. And some of it's going to cheese you out, but it's genius.
Okay.
A band, Queensryche, Operation Mindcrime, was a wonderful concept record. Almost functioned like a rock opera in the 80s. OK Computer is probably my favorite one from the 90s. Now, there's other bands that are similar to us, I guess, similar enough to us. They're not writing maybe as much classical melody writing and whatnot. They're more of a band, like going for a band sound. That would be the Deer Hunter. So they've done a bunch of things. So it was funny because that band formed in the same city the same year we did. And I didn't follow their career. In fact, I didn't even know they existed until like 2017. But when I look back, we'd been doing something very similar, like
What
this
was their
kind of
name?
the Deer Hunter, like
Oh, okay.
DEAR deer. Like, oh, you're my deer. The Deer Hunter. So they were a band, and I look back, and they even had broken up one of their albums into acts, like we had, and stuff like that. So I was like, oh, okay, good. I'm not alone on this island. So there are other bands. The Family Crest is another one. They make concept records, I think, and so they're still out there. As far as sound, I don't know who we sound like. This is one of our problems. It's like, who do you think we sound like? Or we change on records, you know what I mean? It's still Kate and I doing the same style of songwriting, but we'll shift genres to fit the concept.
Yeah.
No, I'd say that I have the same problem you're about to have. It's a problem for our band. That's why we're more of a band's band most of the time. Because other musicians understand what we're pulling off and that it's an added challenge. But the people at home, they evaluate it. Do I like this song? Do I like this song? Or most of the time, people have a genre they associate with. And when they hear that genre, they're attracted to it. If they don't recognize the genre and it's not presented like in the context of a film or something like that, it can be very hard for people to put their head around, like, where does this belong in my life?
Well, I mean, there were like on this last album, there was stuff like I felt like maybe this is wrong, but there was stuff that just like grooved heavier.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Yeah.
There was a little like heavier
Yep.
groove, a little heavier metal influence. So for
Mhm.
me, that's why, I dug your last album more than some of the other ones.
Oh,
You
cool.
know.
Because it hit
Yeah,
a little
but
harder.
that's just because I'm a groove guy.
Hey, I like that. Yeah.
It's like as far as like my personal taste. Now that doesn't mean, you know, they're not all
Yeah.
great. It's just,
Well, it's time and place, right?
preference.
So, so one of the things about modern music is there's a sexuality to the rhythm.
Hey, there's about another hour of this conversation waiting for you over on Patreon. So consider supporting the channel, and you can catch the rest of this conversation over there. Thank you.